What's going on, guys? John Alder here from Tkinter.com, and in this video, we're going to do a deep dive into the Treeview with Tkinter and Python. All right, guys, like I said, in this video, we're going to do a deep dive into the Treeview. But before we get started, if you like this video and want to see more like it, be sure to smash the like button below, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, and be sure to grab your totally free PDF copy of my Tkinter Widget Quick Reference Guidebook. This thing is awesome, over 150 pages with all the Tkinter Widget attributes. Grab your free copy today. Just head over to tkinter.com/widget-book in your email address, and I'll send that right out to you. And while you're there, think about membership in tkinter.com. You can get all my Tkinter courses, all my future courses for one low price. Use coupon code YouTube to get 30% off membership if you're interested. All right, like I said, in this video, we're going to do a deep dive into the Treeview. Now, in the last video, we did the Treeview with TTK Bootstrap, and I promised you guys I would put together a compilation of all my Treeview videos from past videos. And that's what this video is. So a few years ago, I did a very deep dive into the Treeview, and this is what we created. And over the course of 10 or 11 videos or so, we created this very cool database app using SQLite, the database that comes with Python, and the Treeview. Now here you can see it's nice and striped. Now this thing in the middle, this is the Treeview, right? We've got these tabs that are pretty cool. We can click on any one of these and it shows up here. So if we want to edit this, we can edit it and click update record. Now it says Bobby right there, right? You can add a record, you can remove all records, you can remove a selected record or many selected. So we can shift to select, multiple ones of these. So that's cool. You can move them around. So we have Steve Smith here. We can move him up. Boom, now he's up. Right below Aaron, we can move him up again. Now he's above Aaron. We can move him back down, up, all the things. Very cool. We can also search. So we've got a little search box here that pops up. I can type in Elder, for instance. And here we get all the records with last name Elder. Very cool. And we can reset that. We can also change the color. So we can change the primary color of the stripes, right? So if we wanted to do something obnoxious like that, whoa, we can also do the secondary color. Let's do pink. Ooh, that's bad. And then you can see this highlight color. We could change that as well. Let's do dark purple, whatever. It's just horrible. We could also reset the colors. So like I said, this is a compilation of older videos that I did several years ago. They're still very valid. The code is still valid. This will work completely normally, and it'll give you a very deep dive into the Treeview and also SQLite and some cool color things. So as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below. So check that out if you're interested, and this should be fun. So let's get right into it. Remember, these videos are a couple years old. I'm just taking them all and smushing them into one big video that's easy to reference. So you can check the timestamps in the description below if you want to jump around in this video, because it's going to be pretty long, a couple hours at least, I would imagine. I haven't done the math yet, but it's going to be pretty long. So check it out, enjoy. Like I said in the last video, all the stuff you learn about the Treeview in this video, you can apply it to TTK Bootstrap from the last video to use the styles of TTK Bootstrap, right? So this is going to teach you the mechanics of the Treeview. And then, like I said, in the last video we did, so check that out if you want to see how to make it more stylish. But I don't know, I think this looks pretty good as it is, but whatever. So let's get into it. So head over to our code. I've got the Sublime Text Editor and the Git Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the playlist with almost 200 other Tkinter videos. So definitely check that out if you haven't so far. And like I said earlier, we've done a lot of stuff with databases and a lot of stuff with Treeview on this playlist. So if you check back in the playlist, you can find half a dozen or so videos on the Treeview. So if you're not real familiar with the Treeview, maybe go back and watch those. I'm going to fly through it very quickly in this video because there's a lot to do, and I'm just going to assume you sort of already know about the Treeview. I mean, I'm going to still write out all the code and you'll be able to see how I do it, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. So go back and watch those videos if you're a little bit confused. So I've got our basic Tkinter starter code that we always have. And the first thing I did was from Tkinter import TTK. We need the TTK library in order to do a Treeview. So we just go ahead and import that. So you see, I've got some bullet points here, some of the things we want to get through in this video. You can see there's a lot of stuff to do here. So I'm just going to dive right in. The first thing we want to do is add some style for our Treeview because we want to be able to change the color and the formatting of it. We don't just want the basic Treeview. We want to make it look good. So let's create a variable called style. And this is going to be a ttk.style. And the style is a style widget. It comes with TTK. It allows us to do all kinds of cool stuff. So now let's pick a theme. And so let's go style.theme_use, and we just want to use the default theme. And even though it's the default theme, it's not really the default theme. If you just use the regular theme that comes with Treeview, it doesn't look as good, but this default thing gives us some color at the top for our column headers, and we'll see that in a minute. So, okay, So now let's configure the Treeview colors. So let's go style.configure. And we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff here. We're going to work on the Treeview. And let me put these on multiple lines so we can read it easier. Let's set the background to, and I'm going to call D3, D3, D3. That's a sort of a gray color, right? And let's go foreground. And I'm going to set that equal to just black because we don't really see that. And let's go row height. This is going to be how high the rows are. Set that equal to 25. And then finally, let's go field background and also set that to D3, D3, D3. And like I said, D3 is like a silvery color. So, okay, that will set our colors, just the basic Treeview itself. We're also going to change it to where there's striped rows, and we'll do that in just a second. So now whenever we click on actually, let me pull this back over. Whenever we click on one of these things, we want a color to appear. See how it's sort of darker blue? So we can do that by using a style map. So let's go style.map. And again, that style is just the style variable, right? And what do we want to do? We want to work on the Treeview again. And let's set the background to, and this is a little weird, we use a Python list with a tuple inside of it. And we want to go selected, right? And then set the color. And then for this, I want to go 347083. And that's, like I said, that's that sort of darker blue color because I'm going to use a light blue stripe. And so this sort of dark blue, I think, looks good. Use any colors you like, though, whatever you like. I just chose that. Okay, so far so good. So now let's create a Treeview frame. And the reason why we're going to put our Treeview in a frame is because we're going to put a scroll bar on there. You can see here. And scroll bars, as you probably know, they're just easier to do when you stick them in a frame instead of trying to stick them in the Treeview itself or stick them in the anything themselves. Much easier just to use a frame. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to call this tree_frame. And this is going to be a frame. We want to put it in root. And then let's go tree_frame.pack. And let's give this a pad Y of like 10 just to push it down the screen a little bit. So, okay, that looks good. Now let's create the scroll bar. So I'm going to call this tree_scroll because I'm very creative with these names. And this is going to be a scroll bar. And we want to put it in the tree_frame that we just created right here, right? And then we want to go tree_scroll.pack. And we want to put this on side equals right. We want it on the right side there. And we want to go fill equals W. So that's going to be up and down the Y sort of axis or coordinates or whatever you want to call that. So, okay, now let's actually create our tree view. I'm going to go my_tree. And this is going to be a ttk.treeview. And then where do we want to put this? Well, we want to put it in tree_frame, that frame we just created, right? And we want to give this a Y scroll command of tree_scroll.set. And we'll play with that in just a second. We also want to give this a select mode of extended. Okay, so that looks good. So then we can my_tree.pack this guy. And we don't want to give this any padding because we just want it to be right in the frame. And the frame itself already has some padding to push it down the screen a little bit. So we're good to go there. Okay, so now we need to configure the scroll bar. So let's go tree_scroll.config. And we want to give this a command of my_tree.yView. Okay. So now we want to define our columns. And let me pull this back over here real quick. We want first name, last name, ID, address, city, state, zip code. Again, put anything in there that you want, but we're sort of making this a CRM, customer resource management app. So pretend we're keeping track of customers. What do we want to keep track of? Their first name, their last name, their address. Maybe you would probably put an email address in there if they had email, whatever. This is getting a little cluttered as it is. We'll just keep it like this. So we need to define these columns. So our tree view is called my_tree. So we then set the columns to, and this is going to be a tuple. And here we just sort of name all these. So let's go first name, and then last name, and then we want ID, and separating them all by commas and quotation marks, right? So then what? Address, probably city, state, and let's go zip code. Okay, pretty simple. Now we need to format those columns and say, hey, how do we want to do these? And remember, the tree view has a weird first column that we hide off the side, and that's the 0th column. It's just a weird tree view thing if you remember from our tree view videos. If not, go back and watch those. But we set these my_tree.columns, and then we just define them. And remember, this is that first weird one. It's #0, and we want to set the width of this one to 0. And we want to say stretch equals no, all capitals, no. I don't know. And then, so now we could go my_tree.column. Oh, I misspelled column. It's column, not columns. There we go. And let me just kind of copy this. And we want, so first name, last name, ID, address, city, state, zip code, right? So that sounds about right. And here we just want to go first name. And we want to give this an anchor of west and a width of, I think, 140. And that west anchor, you notice up here, our first name is right up against that side there. That's anchored west, right? This one, we're going to anchor center, right? Center, 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 center. For this first one, I want to anchor it left, and probably for this one too, just because, I don't know, just to show you different ways to do it, right? So first name, anchor west, width 140. And actually, let me just copy this too and paste it in here. And actually, let's just do it like this. Try and speed this up a little bit. Boom, 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 boom. So we've got first name, we've got last name, we've got ID, we've got address, we've got city. That's not how you spell city at all. City, state, and zip code. Now for ID, we probably don't want 140. Let's just go 100 because it's just a number, right? And instead of west, let's anchor this center. And so first name, last name, west. I think let's go center for the rest of these too. So let's just boom, knock this out. This and like this. Oh, there we go. And 140, I think that's fine. Okay, so now we've got our columns defined. Now let's define the headings. So you see these sort of gray boxes up here. We need to define those. So let's do that here. We formatted the columns. We create our headings. And very similar, but instead of my_tree.column, oh, I misspelled column again. Look at that. It's heading. And let's see. There we go. N. It's early. Okay, so column is spelled right there. Okay, so mytree.headings. And again, we have to do that weird first one, which is #0, which is just kind of weird. We want the text to be nothing because there's nothing there. And let's give this an anchor of W. And actually, let's just copy this. So first name, last name, ID, address, city, state, zip code. And we could just come through here and go first name and then last name. Here we want ID, address, city, state, and zip code. We are flying right through here. And for the text for each of these, we want the same thing here. So we can just sort of copy this, just type in that one, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, and copy and paste. And again, all of these anchors, we probably want to change from W to center. We'll keep the W for the first two, like I said. So what's the main difference between these? And these, these columns, that's the stuff that's actually in the columns, right? And the headers are the ones on top. So they're very similar, but obviously different. So, okay, we got our headings. So now let's add some fake data, and I'm just gonna copy and paste this because we're not actually gonna use this data. Like I said, we're gonna, boom, let me paste this, and we're gonna actually connect to a database. But for now, just to make sure this all looks right, I'm gonna throw some fake data in that we'll use just to make sure everything looks right. And we'll delete all this later once we connect the database. So, okay, now let's create our striped rows. So let's go my_tree dot tag_configure. And here we want the odd rows. So even and odd rows, every other row. We want the background for the odd ones. So let's go background. and we'll set that equal to white. And let me just copy this. And instead of odd row, now we want even row. We want the background for that to be, let's go light blue. And again, use any colors that you want. Okay, so now let's add our data to the screen, left off one. So let's go global, and we're gonna get rid of all of this later when we connect to the database, but for now, we'll just rough this in. So I'll set a count, let's set that equal to 0. And then let's go for a record in data. And that's just what we called our data up here, right? So we wanna loop through here, and for each thing, let's go if count modulus 2 equals 0. So this will get even rows. So if the count is even, we want to do a certain color. Otherwise, we want to do the other color. So in fact, we could just go else now. So what do we want to do? We want to go my_tree.insert. And we want to insert parent equals nothing. We want the index to equal end, because we want to put each new one at the bottom below the previous one. We want to put it at the end, right? And we want to go IID equals count, which is this guy up here that we just created. We want the text to equal nothing. And we want the values, this is where it gets interesting, to equal a tuple. And here we just want to go a record. And then let me just copy and paste. So we want first name, last name, ID, address, city, state, zip code, I think, right? That sound about right? And then for each of these records, we just give it an index number. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? And then finally, we want to give this a tag. So tags equal, and this is also a tuple, and we want to go even row. And then we have to put a comma and nothing, because tuples, even when they only have one thing, they still need a comma in them. It's just a weird tuple thing. So, okay, so this will set even rows, and we know it's even because we use this modulus here. So modulus returns a remainder. So if we took the number, the count, divided by 2, and there was no remainder, so like 10 divided by 2 is 5 with nothing left over. So if there's no remainder, that means it's even, and we can do that just using modulus, basic Python. So here we can just grab this whole thing and paste it in again, but instead of even row, this is gonna be odd row. Okay, now the last thing we need to do for this is to increase our count. So let's go increment counter, and that's just gonna be count plus equals 1. Every time this loops through here, we'll add 1 to the counter, and then it'll spit out all this data onto the screen. So let's go ahead and save this and run it just to see if this is looking okay. So let's go Python treebase.py. Get it? Treeview with a database, treebase. All right. And so, okay, it looks good. We got our Treeview thing here. We've got our nice scroll bar. We've got striped rows with light blue and white. I like that. We click on something, we get this dark blue. All right, looking good. How are we doing on time? Wow, that took a long time. But let's try and knock out these two bottom things. So if we close this and pull back the regular one here, we want two label frames down here, and we want some stuff in here. And for now, we'll just rough this out. These won't actually do anything just yet, but we can at least put these on the screen. So let's do that real quick. I think we can do that in a few minutes. So let's come down here and add record entry boxes. And I want to create something called a data_frame, and that's going to be a label frame. And we want to put that in root. We want the text to equal records, or record maybe. So that's going to be that record box. So we can go data_frame.pack. And we want to give this a fill equals X to pull it all the way across the whole app. And we want to expand it. So let's go expand equals yes. And let's also give this a pad X of 20 to sort of push it aside from the end of the app. Okay, so that looks good. Now let's just add a bunch of stuff. So we want first name label, and that's going to be a label. We want to put it in that data frame that we just created. We want the text to equal first name. And then let's go fname_label. And let's grid this. We can grid this because it's inside this frame. even though the rest of our app, we've been packing things inside this frame. As long as all we do is grid, we can grid inside of a frame. So let's do that. And let's go row equals 0. Let's go column equals 0. And let's give this a pad X of like 10 and a pad Y of 10. Also to kind of push it apart from all the other things. And then let's also create an FN_entry box. And this is going to be an entry box. We want to put it in data frame. And then let's go FN first name dot entry dot grid. And we can just copy this. But instead of column 0, we want column 1. So let me just copy and paste a bunch of these so we don't have to keep doing this. So first name, last name, ID, address, city, state, zip code. So just come through here and instead of first name, let's do last name. Last name, last name, last name. This is going to be ID. So ID, 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 ID. This one's going to be address. So let me just copy this. Boom, boom, boom. Bear with me. Address. This one's going to be what? City. Boom, boom, boom. Almost done. This one's going to be state. Goes by pretty quick. And then finally, we want zip code. Zip code. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so we've got our first name in row 0, column 0, 1. This one is going to be then 2, 3, and 4, and 5. So we want the first name, last name, and ID on top. Below here, we want address, city, state, and zip code. So let's change the row on these to 1. So 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1, 1. And then, so column 0, 1. Now this will be 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7. Is there 7? Did we mess up? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's right. So let's go ahead and save this and run it. Make sure that looks okay. And it does. It's pushed down a little bit, but when we add the next thing, it'll push it up a little. So, okay, that's looking good. It stretches to the size of this thing because we filled and expanded it. Okay, so we've got a record. Now let's pull up the other one. And we also want commands with a bunch of buttons. So we can knock that out very quickly. Let's add our buttons. And let's create a button underscore frame. And this is going to be a label frame. We want to put it in root. We want the text to equal commands or buttons or whatever you like. And let's go button underscore frame dot pack. And also we want to give this a fill of X. And we want to expand it. So expand equals yes. And let's also give this a pad X of 20. Okay. Now let's just add a bunch of buttons. So we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 buttons. So I'm just going to go underscore button and we'll name these different things. And this is going to be a button. We want to put it in our button frame. We want the text to equal something, no command for now. And let's go underscore button. And let's also grid these. So here, let's go row equals 0, column equals 0. And let's also give these a pad X of 10 and a pad Y of 10. Okay, so what did I say? We needed 8 of those. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And let's pull this guy over again. So we could say we want an update button and an add record button. So let's go update, update. Let's go add, remove all. So remove underscore all, and then remove underscore 1. And then remove underscore many. I don't know. We'll probably play with these as we go forward. But right now, I just want to get them onto the screen. This one's move underscore up. Move up. This one's move underscore down. move down, and finally a select underscore record. Not sure we really need this button, but whatever. And then let's come through here and let's just rough in some text. What do we want these to say? Update record, add record, blah, blah, blah. So update record, add record. This one is remove all records. This one is remove selected, or remove one selected. This one is remove many selected. And then move up, move down, and select record. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this, run it, see how this looks. Oh man, they are all scrunched together. That is not good. All right, we forgot to set the column. So let's come up here to the top. So the first one is going to be 0, and then 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. Get rid of that. Run this guy again. All right, so we are looking good. We've got our nice layout all done. We got the tree view with some dummy data in it that we're going to get rid of once we connect this thing to the database. But it looks good. Now, none of these actually work. When we click on this, it doesn't fill out these fields. This video is getting way too long, so we're going to have to stop it right here. We'll pick this all up in the next video. But so far, so good. We're looking pretty good here. And after this, we'll just sort of connect this to the database and make all these buttons work. And that'll be that. Okay, in the last video, we very quickly roughed out this whole program here. So we've got some basic dummy data, we've got some boxes and some buttons, but none of this stuff really actually does anything. And I just noticed these all say first name, so we're gonna wanna change that and work on some of these buttons. So the next thing we really wanna do is connect to a database. But before we get into that, I think we need to make a few more changes to this thing just to make some of these buttons work, to fix these labels, and to sort of clean this up a little bit more before we connect to a database, which will be in the next video. So let's head over to our code. I'm using the Sublime Text Editor and the Git Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the Tkinter playlist with, man, almost going on 200 videos. So if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and take a look at that. So pull this back up really quickly. The first thing I want to do is change this first name to what these fields actually are. So let's head back over here. I've got my treebase.py file, and let's just come down here to, here's our dummy data. And here are these, it looks like, yes, first name. So we can look at this, we can figure this out. This one is LN name, so that's last name. This one is ID, so we'll just change that to ID. This one is address. And you can see, I can tell by the thing we named it right there. So I'm just gonna quickly change all these. This one's city. This one will be state. And then this one will be zip code. Zip code. Okay, so let's just go ahead and save this and run it really quickly just to make sure we've got this. And yep, that looks good. Okay, so now let's look through here. We've got update record, add record, remove all, remove one, remove many, move up, move down, and select. So let's work on this select first. When we click this, when we highlight one of these and click it, we want the information from here to auto-populate into these boxes in case we want to update any of them. Say we misspelled Tanaka here. We want to be able to click this or click this button and have that information pop up here, so then we can then change it to Tanaka with 2 N's or whatever, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So let's say above our buttons, it really doesn't matter where, and let's say select record. And I'm going to define this and call it select underscore record. And the first thing we want to do is, if there's already stuff in those boxes, we want to delete it. So let's say clear entry boxes first. So let's just go fn underscore entry and then go .delete. And I'm going to set this to 0 and end. We want to delete everything from the 0th position to the end of those entry boxes. And you're going to notice this fn entry is just what I called this fn entry. Then we need ln entry, ID, etc. for each one of these. So I'm just going to kind of quickly copy and paste because there's a bunch of these. And you can go through here and add them yourself. Like I said, they're just what we labeled them. So city entry, right? And they're all delete between 0 and end. So, okay, that will clear all of them. So now let's grab record number. So let's create a variable called selected. And I want to set this equal to my_tree, which is the name of our tree view, .focus. And that means whatever we've clicked on, that's the focus, right? So we want to sort of record that and stick it into a variable that we can then do stuff with. So we've done that. So now let's just grab the record values. So let's create a variable called values. And I want this to be my_tree.item. And what items will we want selected? That's what we defined right here. And what do we want from selected? We want the values. So if you remember back in our tree view, when we kind of put this all together, right here, we went through, we've got all of our data, right? All of this stuff, which will eventually come from a database, but right now we've just got it as a list. So then when we want to add these to the tree view, remember we set the values equal to each of these items in our list here, right? So those are the values. Right? So we want to call those values to grab them. So that's what we did down here, right here. And actually, this needs to be in quotation marks. There we go. So values equal mytree.item selected. These guys, values. Okay, so now we've got them. We can now then insert them into each of these things. Right, so I'm just going to kind of copy these. And let's go output to entry boxes, And let me paste these. And instead of delete here, we want to insert. So I'll just kind of copy and paste this for each of these. Boom, 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 boom. And we want it in the 0th position, the first position of the entry box. And then what do we want? Well, we don't want end, we want the values. And then this is going to return a list index, right? Because remember, this is basically a list data. So this is the 0th item, this is the first item, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, just like with any list, right? So we can access those by calling those numbers. So for instance, value 0, and I'm just going to come through here and paste all of these in as value 0, and then we'll go through and change them. So this is going to be 1, and then 2, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so that should do the trick. Now we need to call this function whenever we click on that select button. So let's come down here and look for the select record button. There it is. And we just give this a command equal to select record. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this and run it. Make sure that worked because that was a lot of stuff. So let's click on John Elder, click the select record, boom, it pops right in. Okay, so that's cool, but we really just want to be able to click on this and have these things appear without having to then click on a button. So how do we do that? Well, we'll just do our regular old binding. We've done that before. So let's head back over to our code. And I'm just going to come down here to the bottom and I'm going to say bind the tree view. And to do this, we just call my_tree.bind. We've done bindings a lot in the past. And inside of here, we want quotation marks and then we want brackets. And this is going to be button release -1. And that's basically when we click on a thing, right? You click with the button and then you let your finger off the button. That's releasing it. And when that happens, we want to run a function. What do we want to run? Well, we want to run that select_record function that we just created. Okay, so that will do that. Now, remember, anytime we do a binding, we need to pass an event, whatever the event is, in this case, the button being released. We need to pass that into the function. So I just always do that as an E. We're not going to do anything with that E, but the function is going to be looking for it. So you need to put it there. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's run this guy one more time. Head back over here and bump. So now when we click on one of these, for instance, Erin Arrington, boom, she pops right up. Click on Tina Brown, boom, Tina Brown pops right back up. Now we got a problem. When we click this button, we're not passing that E. So if you wanted to keep this button the way it is, you would create that function as a lambda, pass anything, 1, 10, Bob, pass anything into it, and then that will work. But we really don't need this select record button anymore because now it's working just by clicking on that, which is much better. So instead of having this as select record, let's have it clear these entry boxes. It's nice to have a button to clear all of them if we want to. So let's do that real quick. So head back over here and let's come back down to our buttons and select record. Let's instead of calling select record, let's call clear entries, right? So we need to create this function real quick. And instead of having this say select record, let's change this to clear entry boxes. Okay. And then let's come up here and here's our function stuff. Let's go clear entry boxes and let's define clear entries. And then we've already done this. So let's just copy this and paste it in here. Okay, that should work. Let's head back over here, run this guy again. So now when we click on Bob Bobberly, it fills it out. We click this button, boom, it deletes them all. It doesn't delete it, it just clears the boxes, right? Okay, so that's looking good. Okay, so now what do we want to do? Well, let's look through here. Maybe we want to move these up or down. So if we click on Tina and we want to move her up to where Steve is in this little tree view, how do we do that? Well, pretty simple. Let's head back over to our code. So let's come over here and let's go move row up. Start with up, I suppose. And let's go define, I'm going to call this up because, you know, I'm that creative in my naming. So let's create a variable. Let's call it rows. And this is just going to be my_tree.selection. Again, just whatever we've clicked on, that's the selection. And now we want to move these guys. So let's loop through here. Let's go for row in rows. We want to take my_tree, and then we want to go .move. And I talked about this way back when we first learned about trees or tree views in the Tkinter playlist. If you want to go back and watch that video to learn about what this stuff is in a little more detail, go ahead and do that. I'm just going to blow right through here and assume you already watched all that stuff. But if you didn't go back and watch those, it's in the playlist. So we want to call row, and then we want to go my_tree.parent, and that's a row again. And then let's go my_tree and let's move this guy. So let's call the index number of each row, and that's index of row. And then we just subtract one, right? And so that should work. Okay, I think that'll work. So this will move it up. So rows are, 0, 1, 2, 3. So if we want to move it up, we want to move 3 to 2. So we subtract 1, right? So that will work there. Now let's, while we're at it, move row down. All right, so let's define, maybe we'll call this one down. And same deal here. I'm just gonna copy this. We want to define what's selected. Now this is a little bit different. We want to go for row in reversed row. It's just a little bit different. We call reverse. We're doing the same thing, but we're kind of doing it in reverse. And here we call my_tree.move again. And again, we want to call row, and then we want my_tree.parent of row. But now we just call my_tree.index of that row, and we want to add one. So last time we subtracted one to move it up, to move it down, we add one, but we have to call this in reversed. Again, I talk about that in more detail in the original Treeview video if you want to go back and watch that and learn, really what this is all about. But like I said, I'm just going to blow through here and let's run this and see if it worked. So we can take Bob, who's number 5. We want to move him up. Oh, didn't work. Move down. Oh, you know what? We forgot to add the buttons. We forgot to give the buttons commands. So these are up and down. So let's go down to our buttons and find the move up and move down. And we need to give this a command of up. And this one will be a command of down. Okay, so now we can save this and run it. Let's clear the screen. Boom. Pull this over. Let's grab Bob again. He's number 5. We want to move him up. And we can move him up again. We can move him all the way to the top. And we can see now Bob is 5. Now notice his colors have changed. So if you really want to change the colors based on moving, and that's a whole other thing, you can get into that if you want. I'm going to leave that because I don't really care. So we got this set up. We can move it back down. Uh-oh, we've got an error. Local variable row reference before assignment. What in the world did I do? I knew I kind of blew through that a little fast. All right, so let's come back up here to down, rows, my tree.selection for row in reversed. Oh, there we go. Misspelled row. All right, one more time. Let's grab Bob. Let's move him down. Boom, boom, boom. Now it's 7, 8, 5. We can move him back up. Boom, boom, boom. Now it's 3, 4, 5. And that's cool. Okay, so we can clear these. We can move him up. We can move him down. Let's remove some records. So say we don't want Bob. We want to click remove one. How do we do that? Well, pretty simple. Head back over here and let's remove one record. And this is going to change a little bit when we add the database because we want to remove it from the database, not just from the screen, but we don't have the database yet. So for now, let's go define remove _1. And that's going to be a function. And let's just create a variable. I'm just going to call it X. And again, this is my _tree.selection. But here we want to call the 0th item of that selection. And then we just call my _tree.delete, and we want to call X. Okay, and now we need to come down here and find the button. So let's go remove one button. And we need to give this a command of that function we just created. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. Let's run this guy one more time. So let's find Bob. Let's get rid of him. I never really liked him. He's a bad apple, Bob. Bobberly. What kind of a name is that? So remove one selected. Boom. He disappears. And you'll notice, again, the coloring is off because of that. We can remove another one to kind of make it look better. So, okay. Again, I'll let you mess with the coloring if you want to change that, but that's good for now. So that's removing one. We can also hold down the control button and click several of these to highlight several of them. If we want to remove all of those, remove many selected, we can do that. So let's head back over here and right around here, let's go remove many records. And let's go define remove. Let's call this remove many. Again, that's going to be a function. And then again, I'm just going to kind of copy this. This time, since we're doing many, we don't need to define the index number. So let's just go my tree.selection. And then we need to loop through here and grab all of the ones that we've selected. So let's go for a record in X. We want to my _tree.delete that record. Okay, that'll do. So now let's copy this name and go down to our button and add it. So remove one, remove many, there it is. So let's give this a command of remove many. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this and run it. So let's get rid of Bob, who's managed to make his way back. And that's blue. Let's also get rid of Tina and John. So 5, 7, and 9. Let's go remove many. Boom, they're all gone. Okay, so that's cool. Now, what if we want to remove them all? We can do that. Head back over here. And let's come back up here. And let's go remove all records. So let's go define remove _all. And let's go for a record in my _tree. And here we want to get the children of the tree. So let's just go .get children. And that's a function. And inside of here, we just want to go my _tree.delete and then pass in record. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. Again, we need to add this to the button. So let's come down here, find our remove all button. There it is. And just give this a command of remove all. So save this, run it. A lot done in this video. Now here we can just remove all. Boom, they all disappear. There you go. Okay, so what else can we do? We can do update record, I suppose. But again, that's going to be changed based on when the database is, because we're going to want to update them in a database, not just on the screen. But for now, let's say define, and let's go update _record. And let's give this a comment of update records or update record. And here we want to grab the record number. And here let's go selected. Let's create a variable called selected. And this is going to be my _tree.focus, whatever one we've clicked on. We could also probably do selected, but let's do it this way. And here, let's say update record. So we want to go my_tree dot item, and then what item? The selected one, right? And then here we want the text to equal nothing, but we want the values to equal whatever are in these entry boxes. So it's going to be like fn.get. We want to get it. Let's say the other one was, actually, this video is getting a little long. I'm just going to copy all of these because they're just these, right? So you just want to come in here and .get each of these guys, right? These are entry boxes. So I'll let you go ahead and do that. For now, I'm just going to pop them all in. Ooh, we've got too many brackets there at the end. So make sure I did this right. So first name entry, last name entry, ID entry, .get, address entry, .get, city entry, .get, state entry, .get, zip code entry, .get, and then we have a comma here with nothing after it. It's just a weird tuple thing you probably need to do. Maybe not, but I think that is correct. And then after we do that, we probably want to clear the screen. So I'm going to grab this from earlier when we cleared the entry boxes. And after here, let me just put that in there. Okay, so now we need to add this update record function to the button. So let's see, update button, right there it is. So we can go command equals, boom, update record. All right, let's save this guy and run it, see if that worked. We did that kind of fast. Chances are I made an error. So let's click on John Elder. Let's say we want to change it to Johnny Elder. I don't know why you would want to, but let's update this record. Boom, up here it says Johnny Elder now. And the screen gets cleared. So my God, we got to change that back because nobody ever calls me Johnny and don't start. So now we can update this. Boom, it goes back to John Elder and the entry boxes are clear. And I think we're good to go. So I'm going to leave this add record button because we're really going to want to just do that for the database. We could make this work where we add a record here, but it's kind of silly because without adding it to the database, we're just going to have to do that. Anyways, we'll leave that to the next video. But the rest of these buttons pretty much work. The remove all, remove one, remove many, move up, move down, clear the entry boxes. We can click on here and this thing kind of adds the stuff to these boxes. We can clear that. All right, we're coming right along. This video is getting a little bit long. So in the next video, we'll go ahead and tackle the database stuff. We'll start to add that in there and sort of connect this to the database. So we're not just using dummy data like we did at the beginning here, but that'll be coming up in the next video and that will be lots of fun. Okay, in the last video, we kind of came through here and spruced up these buttons. We got them to work. We got this to where when we click on it, these boxes get filled out with whatever we click on. In this video, we want to go ahead and connect to the database. And we're going to be using the SQLite3 database for this. Now, once we do that, it'd be really easy to switch it over to the MySQL database or some other database if you want, but you'll get the basics of how to do it using SQLite, and then we'll kind of move from there. If you guys want to sort of add a more powerful database in the future, and I have videos on using MySQL in the playlist earlier, so take a look at those if you're interested. So we're using the Sublime Text Editor and the Get Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the Tkinter playlist with going on, oh man, almost 200 videos. So if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and do that. And we've been doing this the last few videos, so we've got all of our code here. And you'll notice we've been pulling our data straight out of this Python list. In this video, we're going to get rid of this and we're going to take all of this data and move it into the database just so there's something in there. We don't want to add these each individually one at a time. So we'll just sort of bulk add all of this stuff to the database. And then when the program starts, we'll pull all that stuff out of the database and put it up on the screen. And that's mostly what we're going to look at in this video. So to get started, to use the SQLite database, all we have to do is import it. So let's go import SQLite3. And SQLite3 comes with Python. It's already there. It's already installed. We don't have to install it. We don't have to do anything at all. We can just use it, which is really nice. And it's a good reason to use it to learn how to do database stuff. Like I said, switching over from SQLite into MySQL or even Postgres is fairly trivial after we set up the guts of this thing, which we're going to do in this video. So, okay, the first thing we want to do, and let's just come down here and let's, do some database stuff, right? And so the first thing we want to do is create a database or connect to one that exists. So the nice thing about SQLite is if you tell it to create a database, if it already does, it won't do it again. If it hasn't, it will go ahead and do that. So to do that, we create a connection, and I'm going to call this con, short for connection. anytime we're doing database stuff, we often connect using a variable like that. So we want to call SQLite3.connect, and then we just want to name this thing. So let's name this tree crm.db. So we're doing Treeview stuff. We're doing a CRM app, customer relationship management app, whatever. So I'm going to call this tree crm.db. And that's pretty much it. So now we can create a cursor instance. And a cursor is sort of like, I don't know, I kind of like to think of it as a little robot. It goes off and does things for you, right? You tell it to do something, it goes off, it does it, brings back the answer, and it gives it to you. It'll connect to the database, grab the data, bring it back. If you're going to add stuff, it will take your data, run it over to the database, add it to the database. It's a little, I don't know, it's a cursor. So I'm going to create a variable called C, short for cursor, because we're going to type this a lot. I don't want to type cursor over and over again, so we'll just call it C. And then we want to call the connection, that CONN thing right there. So we're going to be using that database. So con.cursor. And that's a function. So there we go. So that's all we have to do that. Now, a database is cool, but a database is kind of not a thing, right? It's the table inside of the database that's important. It's the table that's going to hold all of our data. So we have to create a table or acknowledge that there is a table. So let's go ahead and create a table. And to do that, we call C. That's our little cursor guy, right? And what do we want to do? We want the cursor to execute a command. And there's several different ways we can do this, but this is going to be a lot of stuff. And instead of having this all on one long line, I want to put it on multiple lines. And to do that, we use triple quotation marks. So opening and closing triple quotation mark tags, right? So, okay, what do we want to do? Well, we want to create a table, and this is pure SQL, right? If you know what SQL is, the structured query language for databases, that's what this is. This is just SQL. So let's create table if not exists, right? So if it already exists, don't create it. If it doesn't exist, go ahead and create it. So that's nice there. So if it doesn't exist, we want to create a table called customers, right? And now what do we want in this table? Well, let's just sort of put this on multiple lines. Now we just want to define the table, right? What's the data that we want to store in this table? And we can come down here and look and see what we've been doing so far. We've been using a first name, last name, ID, address, city, state, and zip code. So, and that just corresponds to this data. So first name, last name, ID, city, state, zip code, right? So let's go ahead and add those things. So we need to do two things here. First, name them. So I'm going to call this one first_name. And now we need to define the data type. What kind of data is this going to be? And what we want it to be is text. Now, SQLite doesn't have a whole lot of data types. Some databases have a ton of different data types. SQLite has like 4 or 5, I think. So we've got text, we've got integer, which is whole numbers. We've got real, which is decimal numbers. Null, which means doesn't exist, and blob. Blob is like images and things like that. So really, text and integers are really kind of the only ones we're going to be using. We're not going to be using decimals in this. So these are almost all going to be text, or the ID will probably be an integer, but whatever. So let's go ahead and flesh this out. So last name, that's going to be text. We also want ID. That will be an integer. Integer. Okay, that's spelled right. Then we want address, and that's going to be text. City, that'll be text. State, also text. And zip code, that could be an integer, but I'm going to leave it as text just because, you know, in some other countries, zip codes have have letters in them. So we'll just leave it as text. Really doesn't matter. And that's kind of all there is to it. So that will create a table if it doesn't exist. If it does exist, it won't do anything. So, okay, we've got our table. We've got it defined. Now, what do we want to do? Well, anytime we do a thing, we also need to commit the changes. So we call con.commit. There we go. And we also want to close our connection to the database, right? You don't really have to, but it's sort of best practices. So that's just con.close. Okay, so every time the program runs, this will happen. We'll connect to the database. If the table doesn't exist, it will create it. If it does exist, it'll kind of skip over all this. And yeah, that's all there is to it. So the first time around, we kind of want to take all of this data that we've been using, and let's just put it in the database for now. We're probably going to delete it later, but just for this video to get something in there to make sure this is all working, let's kind of slap all of this data into our database. So we could do that, kind of hack away at this really quickly and do it. And let's go add dummy data to database, or to table, I guess, technically. So this is a Python list. So we need to this thing is a Python list. So we need to loop through it and add each of these things to the database. So we can go for record in data. Remember, that's what we called it. Come down here and look, it's called data, right here. Okay, so for record in data, what do we want to do? Well, we want to c.execute. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to insert into our customers table, right? That's the table we just created. What do we want to insert? Well, we want to insert the values of, and here we could just put each of these things. So to do this, we're going to use kind of dummy variables and then define them below. So to do that, we use colon. So this is going to be first underscore name, colon, last underscore name, colon, ID, I think. So yeah, ID, then address, city, state, zip code. Hopefully we could remember that. So that is address, city, state, and zip code. Okay. So then we come to this quotation mark and slap a comma in there. And then let's continue this on the line below. So let's give us some space here. And now we just want to create a Python dictionary. And inside of there, we'll just use key value pairs to define all of this stuff. So we do that like first underscore name, colon. And then what do we want to insert into that? Record 0, comma. And then last name. And we're just going to come through each of these and call record 1. And remember, 0, 1, we're just going through here and say this is 0, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Because this is a list and we can grab the list items by calling its index number, and those start at 0. So John is 0. John is the first name. So we see up here, first name, record 0. And we're calling this record because right here, as we're looping through the list, the data list, we're calling them record. So record 0, record 1, etc. So just come through here real quickly and just record, let's see, this is going to be 2. And then it's address, record 3. And then city, record 4. Hey, ooh, there we go. And then state, colon, record 5. And finally, zip code. So zip code, that's going to be record 6. There we go. Closing that, closing that. Okay, so that looks good. So we only have to do this one time, and then that'll insert all of our stuff in there. This will commit that change. This will close our connection. Now, one thing, we're calling data, and our data is way down here. So we need to move this. So let's just copy all of this and Control C to copy it, delete it, and let's bring it all the way up to the top here. And then let's just slap this right there for now. So, okay, that will work. So now below here, let's create a quick function. I'm going to call this query underscore database. And inside of here, let's just copy this because we're going to do some database stuff. There we go. And then let's also copy this, bring it in there, have all this over. Okay, so we're connecting to the database, we're grabbing a cursor. Now let's run a quick test here to see if that worked, if our data got entered into the database. So let's query the database and see. So let's go c.execute. Create a little cursor here. And what do we want to do? We want to select everything. So let's use the star, select everything from our customers database table, right? And now let's create a variable called records. And let's set that equal to c.fetchAll. And if you don't know what fetchAll is, it just fetches everything. And this is, I'm kind of blowing through the SQL stuff. I've got a whole course at Codemy on SQLite3, also on MySQL. It goes into actual SQL stuff. What is SQL? How to do all these things? What all these things mean? So if you're interested in that, go check that out. We also got a few videos on this with Tkinter in this playlist way back when, so you can check those out as well. But I'm not going to explain it any further than that. You can go learn that stuff in those other videos if you want. So records, cFetchAll. So now let's just print to the screen records. And hopefully if this works, it'll put all the stuff onto the screen. Okay, so let's grab this and just at the bottom of our program, let's just run that. So I'll paste that in for now. Go ahead and save this. Let's head back over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this Python treebase.py. And when we do, we get our app. Nothing really has changed here, but when we close it, boom, you can see it's printing out all the stuff from the database, which has indeed been added. So awesome. So let's come back over here. And first thing I want to do is come back up here to the top. And well, first off, let's comment out this stuff because we don't need it anymore. Data. Get rid of that. Boom, boom, boom. And we also want to comment out this because we don't want to add this to the database every time we run the program, right? So I'm going to comment this out. I'll leave it here so that if you guys want to look at the code later on, it'll still be in there. But we don't want to do this every time the program runs. Now, what we want to do is, instead of printing this, we want to take this stuff that we fetched from the database and add it to our tree view. As it is now, if we save this and run it again, it won't work because there's no data defined, right? We just commented out our data. So what we need to do is add the stuff from the database that we fetched here to our tree view, right? So if we come down here, we've already got the code for that basically right here. So we created this counter and then we're putting the stuff from data, right? And then, we did it like this so that we can do even and odd rows to change the color in the tree view, right? So we could do that same thing. Let's just go ahead and copy this stuff. I'm going to Control-C, copy it and delete it, and then come back up to our query database thing right here, and let's paste this in, and we need to tab this over. So instead of doing data, we're going to do records because we fetched everything from the database and assigned it to this variable records, right? And it's basically returning, let's see, a list just like before, right? So we can keep the same exact code, just change data here to records. So let's go ahead and do that. Boom, save this. Now down here, at the very bottom here, we're still querying the database. So let's make a little comment. Run to pull data from database on start. So whenever the program starts, we want to query the database, pull in all the stuff, and that should do it. So let's go ahead and save this, head back over here, clear this screen and run this guy one more time, and boom, it works. So that's all there is to it. This information came straight out of the database, and we know it did because we commented out our data list. Remember up here, here's where we used to be getting all that data, and we commented out. So the program can't use that anymore. So we're definitely getting it from the database. Also, we can pull up a file explorer, and we can look through here, and let me just sort of update this. And you can see there's our tree_CRM database. Like it's right here in our GUI directory. The GUI directory is the same directory where our tree base file is sitting, and that's where the database itself is created. And you can see it's got 8 kilobytes of information in it. And so that's cool. So that's how you connect to the database. In the next video, we'll get into adding items to the database and pulling out singular items from the database and all that good stuff. But this one's getting a little bit long, and we've now connected to the database. We've imported all of our data from a Python list into the database and then pulled it back out to use it in our Treebase app. And it's pretty cool. Okay, database primary key. What am I talking about? Well, in the last video, we connected this thing to the database, and you can see we're pulling our data from the database and putting it in our tree view. And you'll notice this ID column. Now, this is a little weird, and we need to kind of talk about this. This ID came from Several videos ago at the very beginning when I created this fake data, I just put this number in here, but that's not good enough. We need to generate this automatically in the database. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. But before we get started, I'm using the Sublime Text Editor in the Git Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code for this video and all these videos in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the other Tkinter playlist videos. There's, I don't know, going on 200 by now. So check those out if you haven't so far. So, okay, what am I talking about? This number right here. Remember when we created this fake data at the beginning, I just made up this number and that was fine then, but now we're connecting to the database. And every time we create a record or edit a record, we need a unique ID number to, sort of associate with each of these records. So you don't want to look up Bob Field or Aaron Smith because there might be 20 Aaron Smiths in there. You need to look it up by a specific ID. It has to be unique. So for instance, 14. And that worked fine when we were doing it this way, but we're not doing it that way anymore. We're doing it with the database. So instead of just using a made up number, we need a primary key. And with databases, a primary key is a unique ID number that is either created or assigned whenever you create a record, right? So we're using the SQLite database right now. We're probably going to switch to MySQL or Postgres in the future. But for right now, we're just getting the kinks worked out with SQLite. And luckily, SQLite creates a unique primary key for you every time you create a row or every time you add a record. So that's really cool. We can access that instead of accessing these weird numbers that we just made up. So that's what we're going to look at in this video. So let's take a look at what's actually being pulled out of the database when we run our query. So remember in the last video, we set all this up, and if we come down here to the bottom of our code, we can see when the app first runs, we're running this query database function. So let's go find that function. It's probably up around the top here. There it is, query database. So in the query database function, we're connecting to the database. We're creating a cursor, and then we're executing. We're saying, hey, select everything in there from our customers table. And the customers table is the table that holds all of our data. So when we do that, we're then sort of fetching it, right? Fetch all, and then we're assigning it to this records variable. And then down here, we loop through that records variable and we output onto the tree view each row, right? So instead of doing that, I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to go for record in records. Let's just print the record. Let's just see what's getting actually pulled out of that database, right? And we can do that just like this. Now this will print this right to the terminal whenever we close the program. So let's go ahead and save this. And let's head over to our terminal, and you notice I'm in our C GUI directory that we're always in. And let's just run our file. So Python treebase.py. And when we do, it opens. And then when I close it again, boom, it prints out all of the stuff from the screen onto the screen from our database. And you'll notice John Elder, there's the ID number we created. That's not the actual primary key. That's just something we created. The address, town, state, and zip code. You'll notice there is no ID. But like I said, SQLite creates one for us, but we have to specifically call it. And we could do that. Let's see, head back over here. When we run our query for the database, instead of saying select everything from the customer, we want to select row ID and everything. So we can select both the row ID and everything else because they're kind of separate, right? Everything else we put in there. The row ID, SQLite creates itself. So it sort of distinguishes differently between the two. So we have to specifically call it by calling row ID. So now, just by making that change, we'll keep this print thing the same. Let's save this and run it again. And let me clear the screen. So our app runs. When we close it, boom, now you see it has the row ID, which is in fact the primary key. Now this will be a unique number for every record. And it just so happens that these sync up. So row ID 9 is our ID 9. That's just coincidence. If I was building this from scratch, I would not have put this ID in there, but we didn't sort of do it from scratch. We were kind of fuddling along while making the video. And at the time we needed to create an ID, ourselves probably. And so I did, but what we really want to do is just reference this row ID. So, okay, let's change our app around so that, let me run this again. See, right now we've got the ID. Well, here's something curious. Notice everything's messed up now. First name is listed as 1. Last name is listed as John. The ID is listed as Elder. Why is that? Well, that's because the data we're pulling now has an extra column. So when we output it, there's an extra column to deal with. So we'll need to tweak that code, and we'll do that in just a second. But you'll notice from now on, we don't want this ID to be the ID we put into the database, which is this thing right here. We don't want to reference these anymore. Instead, we want to reference these. So I hope that makes sense. We want to start using the primary key, the row ID, for the ID in our tree view, not this made up thing. And if I was really serious about this, I would delete these, but I'm not all that serious about this. This is just for educational purposes anyway, so we'll leave it in there because it's kind of interesting and we need it for earlier videos. But from now on, we're going to access this row ID. How do we access the row ID? Well, we're still spitting out this same list in tuple form. Now the 0th item of each of these tuples is going to be the row ID. So this will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you look back at our code, if you remember, when we output this onto the tree view right here, let's see, we reference those numbers. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So we need to tweak these because let's pull this back up. We can see the 0th item right here is now 1. It's not first name, right? So we need to change this. The first name is now going to be the 1th item. So let's just go ahead and change this. So this will be the 1th item. The last name will be the 2nd item. The row ID will be the 0th item, right? And then the next thing will be not 3 because that's our old ID number. So the address is now going to be 4. This will be changed to 5. This will be changed to 6. And this one will be changed to 7. And now these are for, I think, even. Yeah, even. We need to make the same change for the odd. So let's go 7. We could just sort of manually do it like this. We already sort of know. And I think this is the right way to go here with these numbers. We'll run it to make sure. But I think this is right. It makes sense to my brain right now. We'll see if it actually translates onto the screen. So, okay, now this should work. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's head back over here, close this guy, and let's run this one more time. And let me clear the screen just for fun. So now, all right, it looks like everything's back to normal. John is now first, Elder, last name. The ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And again, this ID number is now the row ID. It's not that dummy data that we put in from the earlier video. It's the actual row ID, which is the primary key, which is being generated by SQLite whenever we create any new record, which is fantastic. The address is correct, city is correct, state looks right, and zip code looks right. So now our data is all fine. Now, when we click on one of these, you'll notice these boxes update still correctly. That's because these boxes aren't coming from the database. We're pulling these boxes straight from the tree view. So if we look back at our code, let's look down at the very bottom, I believe. Yeah, right here. This is where we're binding the tree view. So when we click on it, it runs this select record function. So if we search for that, there it is, select record. And the first thing it does is deletes everything in the boxes, and then it grabs whatever you clicked on in the tree view. And it grabs those values, and then it inserts those values one at a time into the box. So it's grabbing those values from the tree view, not the database. So the flow is when the program starts, we're querying the database, we're taking that data, looping through it, putting it in the tree view, and then we're good to go. Then if we click on the tree view, we're taking the value from the tree view, not from the database, and we're putting that in each of these boxes. So we don't have to change anything here. That still works. So I think that's pretty much it. This is not a very exciting video, but in the next few videos, we're going to be updating and changing this data in the database. Right now, we can make a change. So I can come up here to John, and I can put John Elders, and I can click Update Record. And you can see it updates here, right? It doesn't update in the database yet. So let me change that back to John Elder. Update it. And here we can add records and remove records. But again, we're just adding it to the tree view. We're not adding it to the database. So we're going to do those in the next couple of videos, but we can't do that until we sort out this primary key thing that we did in this video. So now we're good to go. Each of our things has primary keys. We know what record numbers those are, what row ID numbers those are. And so in the future, when we want to update one, we're not going to update John Elder. We're going to update 1, right? If we want to update Mark Lane, we update number 8. because there's only one 8. There's only ever one primary key. They're unique numbers. So if that's what I want you to sort of take away from this video, primary keys are unique numbers. Most databases will create primary keys for you, like SQLite has done for us here. Some of them don't, and you'll have to sort of say, hey, create a primary key, and we'll look at that if it comes up. But as far as SQLite goes, it makes it for us, so we're good to go. So that's pretty much all I want to talk about in this video. Again, not a very exciting video, but in the next video, we'll jump in and start actually updating these things in the database. So you'll see how to update stuff by the database and the Treeview at the same time. And that'll be hopefully a little bit more interesting than just this primary key stuff. But like I said, we had to talk about it first before we get into those other things. And now we've done that. Okay, moving right along with our Treeview Treebase app here. We've got this set up to where we're pulling this stuff from the database and we can update a record. So if we click on this, it says John Elder. If we change it to John Elder 2, it'll do that. But it's just updating it right now on this Treeview in this striped table thing. It's not actually updating it in the database itself. And we want this to update in the database so that if we close this program and open it again, any changes we've made, any updates we've made will be saved to the database and will be shown accordingly. So that's what we're going to look at in this video. And it's actually pretty simple. So head back over to our code. I'm using the Sublime Text Editor and the Get Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code for this video in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to all the other Tkinter videos in the playlist. There's almost 200 of them now. So if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that out. So let's head down to the bottom of our code from last time. And you'll see whenever we're clicking on something in the Treeview widget, we're calling this select record function. So if we look at that function, when we click on a thing, you'll notice it's putting the output of whatever we're clicking in those boxes. So we run this again, you'll notice we click on something, it's adding them in these boxes. So we have all of the data already sort of separated out into nice little boxes. All we have to do now is sort of update the database with whatever's in those boxes. And that's actually pretty simple. So let's head back over here. And what we want here is the update record function. So when we click that button, you run it one more time. Right here, we pull up a record. When we click this update record button, change that back to Elder 2, right there, boom, this update record function gets called, and that's what we want to mess around with in this video. So here we are, it's update record, and you can see it's grabbing the stuff and it's updating it in the Treeview, but we want to actually, and then it's clearing the boxes afterwards. So inside of here, we want to actually update the database. I want to spell that right? So we can come up here to where we queried the database, and you'll see these steps right here. We always want to do these two things whenever we're working with the database. First, we have to connect to the database right here, and then we have to create a cursor. We've already talked about this stuff in the past. And then when we're done, we need to commit it and close it. So actually, we can just kind of copy, well, I guess we can copy all of this if we're going to be lazy. Come back down here to the update function, update records, there it is. And let's just paste this stuff in. Now, obviously, we're not going to need all of this stuff, so we can get rid of that. But we do want to connect to the database. It's our tree-CRM database. And we want to set a cursor. We don't need this stuff either. And when we're done making our changes, we want to commit and we also want to close. So all we have to do now is designate what we want to do. So let's go c.execute. And we're going to be working with a bunch of different things. So I'm going to use triple quotation marks. So we can do this on multiple lines. So what we want to do here is we want to update the database. And what do we want to update? We want to update our customers table. And then we want to set, and then let's put this stuff on separate lines. We want to set the first underscore name to something. I'm just going to call this first. We want to set the last underscore name to something. Again, I'm just going to call this last. And these are sort of like placeholders that we can then take other things and sort of slap them in there. And you'll see what that means. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. We also want to update the address. And that's going to be address. We also want the city. And that'll be city. We want the state. And that'll be state. We also want the zip code. And that will be zip code. Okay, so we want to set these things, right? These are the things we want to edit or update, right? Well, what do we want to edit them with? Well, we want to edit them with, so we type in here where OID equals colon OID, and then boom, 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 3 of those quotation marks again. And actually that gets rid of these. But here, now we need to designate exactly what we're changing, right? And this OID, we talked about this in the last video, that's our primary key, right? That's our ID number. So this is how we're determining what we want to update. We're saying, hey, update the record that has this OID, this primary key, this ID number, right? So, okay, that will designate which record we want to update. And again, this is placeholder text that we'll fill in a second here. And now what exactly do we want to do? Well, we've got this stuff set up as placeholder text. So we need to define each of these things, right? So we'll do that right here. So first, and this is a Python dictionary. You can tell that because we're using these brackets. And first is going to be fn_entry.get. Right? Now, where am I getting that? Well, that is the buttons. So these are all of the buttons. So first name entry, last name entry, ID entry, address entry, city entry, state entry, and zip code entry. Right? Those are the buttons, or those are the boxes that are being filled whenever we click on the tree view. Right? So, okay, we just have to sort of do one of these for each of these. So let's just kind of rough this in. First name, last name, address, city, state, zip code, and ID number. So this will be last, this one will be address, this one will be city, this one will be state, this one will be zip code, and this last one is going to be OID. That's this guy right here, right? Okay, so now we just need to come through here and sort of, we could just copy each of these. So this will be LN. Address is address entry. Just kind of copying and pasting here. City entry. That'll be this one. State entry will be this one. Zip code entry is this one. And finally, that ID is ID entry. That'll be OID. And so that's pretty much it. Clean that up a bit. We want to commit the changes and close the connection. So I kind of went through that really fast and didn't probably do a great job explaining it, but this is just a SQL command. We're saying, hey, update the database. What do we want to update in the database? We want to update the first name, the last name, address, city, state, and zip code. We want to do it with these things, right? Now, here we're defining these things. It's just a good idea to break these up. You don't necessarily have to, but it's just better this way. Just trust me. And you'll see this is the whole SQL command, right? Between these 3 quotation marks. We're saying, hey, update the customer table. We want to set the first name, last name, address, city, state, zip code, where the OID equals an OID that we've designated. So what of all of these things are we designating? What OID, what last name, first name, etc. That's where we define these things down here. And these are just, these guys are these placeholders that we're now defining, and then we're putting them as the entry boxes. These are our Tkinter entry boxes that we defined earlier. And that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and save this, run it. A little bit confusing, but shouldn't be too bad. And you notice we're still printing out all this stuff. So let me go back real quick and let me just search for a print. Yeah, here we're doing that. Let's comment this out. I don't think we really need to do that anymore. That was just for example purposes last video. So now let's go ahead and run this. So Python treebase.py. And now we could pull this over here. Now we click on one of these, it fills out these boxes, and these are the boxes we just designated, right? The FN entry and LN entry, etc. So let's change this from John Elder to John Elder of 2. We click update record, boom, it updates it up here. Because remember, we did that earlier, way back at the beginning of this playlist. We had it already updating the tree view. So that works. Now if we close this and let's run this guy again, when we open it, you'll notice it now says Elder 2 by default, right? So that's been changed in the database. So success, we've done this correctly. So let's change this back, change it back to Elder 2, update the record. It updates it there. If we close this, we run it again, the 2 is gone. So that proves to us that it has actually been updated in the database. And that's all there is to it. So that's how to update records in the database. Pretty simple. We've got it updating it in the tree view, and it's also now updating in the database, so we're good to go. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so moving right along in our Treebase app, now we want to work on this add record button. So we want to be able to type in a new record, click the button, have it add it to the database, and then update this tree view thing accordingly. So that's what we're going to look at in this video. So head back over to our code. I'm using the Sublime Text Editor and the Git Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code for this video in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the other Tkinter playlist videos. There's almost 200 videos there now, so if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that out now. Okay, so we've got a treebase.py file. And if we come down here to the very bottom where we have all of our buttons, you see this add record button doesn't actually have a command. So we haven't done anything with this just yet. So we can give this a command, and let's set that equal to add_record, or call it whatever you want, but we're going to be adding a record to the database. So we'll just call that add record. Okay, so let's come up here to our functions, and here's the update record function. So let's come down below it, and let's go add a new record to database. And let's define this guy, add record, and that looks good. Now let's come up here, and remember, anytime we're dealing with the database, first we have to sort of connect to the database, create a cursor, and then afterwards commit the change and close. So I'm just gonna copy all of this stuff from, see, our update record function. Now let's come down here and sort of paste this stuff in. So again, we want to connect to our tree_CRM database. We want to create a cursor. And here, this is the actual SQL command. This is going to be quite a bit different. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of this. We still want to commit our changes and close our connection. But let's say add new record. And so let's write some SQL. So we want to c.execute. I almost always want to do that, seems like. And here, instead of doing this all on multiple lines, let's do it slightly differently. Let's insert into, and what do we want to insert into? Our customers table. We want to insert the values of, and let's create a little tuple here. And here, I'm just going to go first, last, ID. And now, normally we're using the row ID, the primary key, but if you remember, when we first created this database, I added an ID column. So even though we're not actually using that ID column anymore, we still have to reference it and sort of add something in there because it's looking for it. Now, normally if I was doing this fresh from the start, I wouldn't have added an ID, and I've talked about this in the last couple of videos, but we've still got it in there, so we still have to reference it. So first, last, ID. We also want address, we want city, we want state, and we want zip code. Okay, so after that, let's put a comma. And now we need, these are just placeholders, right? We need to sort of define those placeholders. And we do it like this. Let me just sort of clean that up. And inside of here, let's see, is there something we can copy and paste? Yeah, we can just copy these guys right here. Alrighty, so let's come down here. We need to modify these a little bit. So after this, we need one for ID. So let's put that in there. And that's going to be ID_entry.get. And we don't want this OID thing. Now, that looks right. So there should be 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I think that's it. So just to recap, what we're doing here is we're inserting into our customers table these placeholder values. What values are those? Those are just each of these entry boxes that we'll have filled out, right? So let's go ahead and save this and run it, see if that worked. Let's go Python treebase.py. And by those boxes, I mean these things right here, right? So let's come down here. Tina Elder's the last one. Let's call this tester McTesterson. And it's given them an ID of 32, although we could put anything because we're not actually using that. And let's say 12 Tester Street in Tester Town, Nevada. I don't know, 89137. And let's add a record here. Now, nothing seems to have happened. We're going to want to delete these after we click this button. And it hasn't shown up here. But if we close this and let's run this again, and let's scroll down here, we see Tester McTesterson is actually been added. So, okay, so far so good. Now, when we add a thing, we also want to delete what's already in all of these boxes. So let's do that real quick. And we could just come up here where we cleared the entry boxes in this function. We could copy that there. Okay, so that looks good. Now we also want to sort of refresh the tree view so that it shows that that record is in there. You know, we don't want to close the program and restart it every time we add a new record. So how can we do that? Well, first, let's clear the tree view table. And we can do that. Let's go my_tree.delete, and we can go my_tree.get_children. And we need to splat this out, sort of unpack it. So what this will do is, this will sort of get the number of rows, row 1, row 2, row 3, and then this will sort of delete each of them. Now this is just going to give us a big long list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, however many there are. We can unpack those and do them one at a time by using this, I don't know what you call it, unpack star, some programming language is called a splat, whatever. We just put a little star in front of it and that should do the trick. So let's save this and run it just to make sure that worked. So I'm just going to go 1, 2, 33, 4, 5, 6, 7. Add a record. Boom, it deletes everything on there. So, okay, that looked good. Now let's run this guy again really quick just to make sure that record got saved. And there it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it got saved. We're deleting everything in the tree view. Now we just need to requery the database. And we can do that really easily just by, well, if we come down here, remember when the program starts, we query the database. So let's just call that function again, right here in our add record thing, underneath here, and that should work. So, okay, let's go ahead and save this, run it one more time to make sure all of that worked. So let's come over here, scroll down. So let's go Mary Testerson. Let's give her an ID of 34. Her address is at 12 Mary Lane in Maryville, Massachusetts, 78782. I don't know, whatever. So now let's add this record. When we click this button, hopefully all of these boxes will be cleared. Hopefully this will be deleted and sort of refreshed without us even hardly seeing it. And this Mary Testerson record will be added here at the bottom. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, click. All right, those have all been deleted. If we scroll down, boom, there's Mary Testerson and Mary Lane, Maryville, Massachusetts, and we're good to go. So that's how you add a record to the database with our tree base. That's how you sort of refresh it after you've added it. And not too bad. Okay, so moving right along in our Treebase app here. In this video, we want to talk about deleting records from the database. Now, I've already got a button on here that allows us to remove something from the Treebase app, but that just removes it from the tree view itself. It's not actually deleting it from the database. So in this video, we're going to look at deleting it from the database. And this is actually pretty easy. So let's head back over to our code, and I'm using the Sublime Text Editor and the Git Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the Tkinter playlist with, I don't know, almost 200 other Tkinter videos in this series. So check that out if you haven't already. So this is the code we've been working on the last few videos. And if we come down here to the bottom here, we see we've got this remove one button. And if we look at the command, it's calling this remove one command. So we can come up here and look at our remove one command that we created, I don't know, 4 or 5 videos ago. And here it is, remove one. And you can see what it's doing is it's grabbing something from the tree view, whatever we've clicked on, whatever we've selected, and then it's just deleting it. And that's fine, that deletes it from the tree view itself, but that's not actually deleting it, like I said, from the database. So how do we delete it from the database? So that's actually really easy. So like anytime we're doing anything with the database, we need to connect to the database, create a cursor, and then commit our change and close our connection. So I'm just going to come down here to where we did that earlier. And let's see, right here is a good one. And I'm just going to copy all of this stuff. And let's just bring it up here to our remove one function and paste it in. Now we obviously don't want all this stuff, and we don't want all this stuff, but we do want to connect to the database. This is our tree_CRM database. We want to create a cursor, and then we're going to do something here. And then when we're done, we want to commit those changes to the database and then close our connection. So that's what we always do. So what do we actually want to do? Well, if we head back over to your terminal really quickly and let's run this app again. And you'll also notice the top of this is in all the other videos, it's been dark gray. My Windows updated overnight and the color scheme for Windows desktop stuff got knocked back to a default. So I'm seeing this blue here. So whatever, I'll change that later maybe in my Windows settings, but for now, who cares? But anyway, when we click on one of these guys, for instance here, Tester McTesterson, you can see it puts all the stuff in these boxes. So after we remove one, like right here, we just removed it. We removed it from the tree view, didn't delete it from the database, but this field is still full of stuff, right? So we want to probably delete everything that's in there, and we'll do that. But also look at this, the ID. Remember, our ID is what designates every unique record. So every record has a unique ID. And we're pulling it from this column ID right here, but this is the row ID, the primary ID from the database. So when we want to delete a record, we want to delete a record with ID 31, for instance. We don't want to delete Tina because there could be 50 Tinas in the database. And we don't want to delete somebody with the last name of Elder because there could be 50 Elders. There's only one person with ID of 31 though. So we can tell the database, delete the record with ID of 31. So that's how we do that with databases. Now it's just with Tkinter, with all databases. Anytime you ever want to delete a record, you're always going to delete it by its unique primary key, its unique ID number. So we can do that. Head back over here. And to do that, let's say delete from database. Let's go c.execute. And anytime we do anything with the database, we're taking our cursor C and we're executing a SQL command. And what SQL command do we want? Well, we want to delete from our customers database table, right? Where now we want to say what we want to delete. Well, we want to delete where the ID or the primary key. But in SQLite3 database language, the primary key, the row ID, is called the OID, right? So we want to set that to where the OID equals something. Well, where do we get the ID number? Well, we can come down here and remember we have this box, this, let's see, ID entry box. Let's find a better one here. Right here, ID entry. So we could just .get whatever's in that box because if we've clicked on a record, then the ID number for that record is sitting in that entry box, right? So we can grab that and we just come back up here and you would think you would put it in like that, but you don't. What you do is leave it like this, and then we want to concatenate and just pop it on at the end. And really, that's all there is to it. Now, we also want to delete all those entry boxes whenever we click, remove. So let's come down here, and remember, we've got this clear entries function. We could just call it. So let's come back up here, and let's say down here, let's go clear the entry boxes, and we can just call that function and that will do it. So, okay, let's go ahead and save this and run it. Like I said, it's really easy to do that and it's really just that easy. So we can come down here and we could see Tester McTesterson with ID number 32. When we click on it, it pops up. It's in these boxes. So we can come down here and remove one selected and then boom, it disappears there. Tester McTesterson is gone there. So we can confirm this by closing this and opening it back up again. And if it really deleted it from the database, that 32 should be gone. And it is. 31 is the last one. And now Tester McTesterson is no longer there. So that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, when we delete something here like this, it just kind of removes it there. I would like a little pop-up box to pop up just to, get some closure in my own mind. Just some little thing that pops up and says, yes, it's been deleted. So let's go ahead and do that real quick because we know how to use message boxes. We've used those tons of times before. If you're not familiar, check the playlist for tons of videos on message boxes. All we need to do is come up here and import message box. So let's go from Tkinter, import message box. Now we can use message boxes. And so if we come back down here to that function we were just working with, let's see, here you go, remove one. Just down here at the bottom, let's just add a little message box for fun, right? And we can go message box dot, let's go show info. There's lots of different message boxes you could do. One that says danger that has like a big X. Show info is just a little info box. So we'll do that. And inside of here for the title of this thing, let's say deleted. I don't know. And then let's give a little message that says your record has been deleted or something, whatever. Just a little something to, give us a visceral sort of feeling that, okay, it's actually been deleted, other than just having it disappear from the entry box, which doesn't really tell us anything. This is very explicit. So let's run this guy one more time. Check this out. Come over here. Let's come down here to the bottom and delete John Elder, number 30. Ooh, that makes me feel funny. Will delete me. That's cool. So let's remove one selected. Boom. We get a little pop-up box that says deleted. Your record has been deleted. We click OK. And these entry boxes have been cleared. And John Elder is gone. So we can come down here, close this, run it again, just to confirm, make sure that's actually been deleted. And sure enough, John Elder is gone from down there. ID number 30 is no more. And that's all there is to it. So that's how to delete a single record from the database. Very, very easy. Probably in the next video, we'll talk about deleting several records at once. That's a little bit harder, but for just one record, very simple and pretty fun. Okay, so moving right along with our Treebase app here. In this video, we want to remove all the records. And we've already got this remove all records button. When we click it, it removes all the records from the Treebase, but it's not removing them from the database itself. So for instance, we can come back over here, run this guy again, and when we do, all the records are still there. So we want to actually remove these things from the database. So when we restart it, there's nothing in there. So the first thing I'm going to do, let's go ahead and close this. Before we do anything, I'm going to head over to a Windows Explorer and navigate to our C GUI directory. This is where we've been working forever. And you come down here and see this tree_CRM. That's our database, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click copy and then right click and click paste. And this is just going to paste in a copy of our database. So we're going to be deleting the database in this video. And I don't really want to delete all the records from our database. So I'm just going to back it up just like that. And that's a quick and easy way you can do that. So let's head back over to our code. I'm using the Sublime Text Editor in the Get Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the Tkinter playlist with almost 200 other Tkinter videos. So if you haven't checked that out yet, go ahead and take a look at that. So we've got our treebase.py file that we've been working on in the last few videos. And if we come down here to the bottom, we see we have this remove one button and then remove all. And if we go to the end of this, we see it's calling this remove all function. So that's where we want to be working at in this video. So let's head up here and let's find that function and select remove all. And we can see this is what we've already got there. This will remove the stuff from the tree view itself, but it's not, like I said, deleting anything from the database. So anytime we're dealing with a database, as we've learned in the last few videos, we need to connect to the database, create a cursor, commit our changes, and then close that connection. So I'm going to come down here to the previous stuff we did, and let's just copy that stuff. So here we go. We can copy all of this. And I'm going to bring it up here to our remove all function. And inside of here, I'm just going to paste it. Now we don't need this stuff and we don't need this stuff. We're going to actually delete everything from the table right here. So of course, here we're connecting to our database. This is the tree_crm.db database. That's the thing we just backed up, right? So we're connecting to it. We're creating a cursor. We're going to do something right here. Then we're going to commit those changes and then close our connection as always. And when we're done with this, let's go ahead and clear the entries as well, just in case we've clicked on one of those things. So, remember if we come up here, run this again, say we click on one of these, see all these boxes are filled. After we click this button, we want all of this stuff to be removed as well, right? So let's just go ahead and call this like that. Say clear entry boxes if filled. I don't know, whatever. So, okay. Now, how do we actually delete everything from the table? Well, we could sort of get all the IDs, loop through the entire table, delete every ID one at a time. But that's sort of resource intensive and it's kind of silly because SQLite, like most databases, has a command that you can just delete everything in the table. And that's the drop table command. And it's pretty much the same for almost any database, MySQL, Postgres. SQLite3, they always have the ability to drop a table. And that's what it's called in database language, to drop the table. We're not deleting a table, we're dropping it from the database, right? And that's no big deal because when this program starts, if we come up here to the beginning, remember way back at the beginning of this little series, we did this create table if not exists. So if we delete our table, if we drop our table and then run the program again, it will recreate the table. There won't be any data in it, but the table itself will be recreated. So we don't have to like recreate the table after we drop it because of this. So to delete everything in the table, we just drop the table. And then the next time the program runs, it recreates the table. If we want to then add new things to the table after that, we can do that. So let's come back down here and let's find that remove one, remove many, remove all. Okay, so here's our function. So how do we drop everything from the table? Well, we use our cursor, c.execute, like we always do, right? And the SQL command is just drop table and then name the table. And our table is called customers. And that's it. That's all there is to it. This will completely drop the table. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's run it, see if this worked. So Python treebase.py. Head over here. I'm going to click one of these for good measure, just so this box is filled. And remove all records. Boom. Okay, it deleted these boxes. It removed everything from our table. Now if we close this and we open it back up again, we see that in fact, yep, everything has been deleted. And we can add a new record if we want. John Elder, 123 Elder Way, Elderton, Nevada, 89137. We can add a record and then boom, there it is. And we can just create another one, whatever. And there's the other one, right? And again, we can remove all these records too, boom, and it still works. So, okay, that seems to work. Now I clicked on something else and we're getting an error here. We don't really care about that right now. So, okay, let's head back over to our little Explorer guy here. And I'm gonna delete this and rename this guy back to what our database originally was. And I'm gonna copy this again and paste in another backup. So, okay, so now if we come back here and run this guy again, we've got our database back. Okay, so that worked, but I'm not real happy about this because when we click this button, it just deletes everything. We need a pop-up box that pops up and says, wait a second, are you sure you want to delete these things? Because this is a big thing, deleting everything from the database. We need some safeguards in place here. So let's do a little message box. Remember in the last video, we created a little message box. Let's come down here to let's come up here to the remove one function that we worked on in the last video. And here's a little message box. So I'm gonna go ahead and just copy this guy. Let's come down here to our remove all. And let's put this very first thing. Now, instead of show info, let's ask yes, no. And this will pop up a little box that says yes or no with two buttons on it that say yes or no. So we can say, wait a second, are you sure you want to delete? Yes or no? And then we could do something based on that. We'll look at that in just a second. So let's change this to, whoa. This will delete everything from the table. And let's put a line break. Are you sure? So let's go ahead and save this. Now, in order to do this ask yes, no, let's put this in a variable. So let's go response equals ask yes, no. So now we can take this variable and we can run some logic on it. So we can go, let's say add logic for message box. So let's go if response equals 1. So if you click yes, it will return 1, just the number 1. If you click no, it will return 0. So let's say if it returns 1, that means yes, we're ready to delete everything. So let's just move all of this inside. So I just tabbed it in. So now let's say clear the tree view, connect to the database, do the stuff, delete the table, drop the table, commit the changes, close the connection, clear the entry box. We don't really need an else. We could go else, do something, but there's nothing else we want to do. If they click no on the message box, that means they don't want to proceed. So we'll just let it die. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. Let's run this one more time, see if that worked. So remove all records. Whoa, this will delete everything from the table. Are you sure? No. All right, it just sort of died. Nothing happened. which is what we want. Remove all records. Whoa, click yes, boom, it deletes everything. So, okay, so that's how you delete everything from a table. You drop the table. And again, like I said, we can close this thing and open it back up again. And when we do, come up here to the top here, this thing will get executed and this will get created. Now we could get fancy and put this into a function and then call that function down here when we delete everything, just so that it recreates the table in case at that time we want to add a little something. Because like right now, let's come back here. Let's delete this. Let's rename this. There we go. And let's copy this guy and paste it in to back it up one more time. And now let's run this. So we've got everything. Let's remove all. Yes. Now, if we want to add something, we get an error. Why? Because the table doesn't exist. We can't add something to the table because it doesn't exist. Now, if we close this and run it again, it will recreate that table. But right now, that table doesn't exist. So what we can do just very quickly is head back over here. And let's just come up here and just copy all of this stuff. And let's just come down here. And let's just create a function. So let's go define, let's say create table again, whatever. And let's paste all that stuff in there. So we need to tab all this over. Okay. And we can get rid of this, clean this up a little bit. Okay, so now we can call this create table again function when we delete everything. So let's come up here to our remove all. And then down here, after we've cleared the entries, let's recreate the table. So we could just call that, right? So now if we save this, head back over here, run this again, redo our database. Here we go, we've got it. Now, if we remove all records, yes, now we can add another record. And we can do that again because we've recreated that table. So that is probably something you want to do as well. So that's pretty much it. Dropping tables, very easy, not much to it. One very simple SQL command, and that's all there is to it. Okay, up until now, we've removed one record, we've removed all the records. In this video, I want to show you how to remove several. So we've got it set up here to where if you hold down the control button and then click several different records, we can highlight several records. And we already have this remove many selected. We can boom, remove them, but that just removes it from the tree base. That's not actually deleting it from the database itself. And that's what we're going to work on in this video. So, I can delete all of these things, remove many. And when I do that, it seems cool, but then when I close it and open this back up again, like I said, all those records are back. So we need to actually delete them from the database. So that's what we're gonna do in this video. And it's a little bit tricky, but it's not too bad. So let's head back over to our code. I'm using the Sublime Text Editor and the Get Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the other videos in the Tkinter playlist, almost 200 other videos. So check that out if you haven't so far. So this is our treebase.py file. This is the app we've been working on since the very beginning here of this little series. And if we come down here, we see remove many. This is the remove many button, and it's calling this remove many function. So we just need to come back up here and find that remove many function. And here it is. And you can see, like I said, we've already got some stuff in here. This is deleting the things we've selected from the tree view itself. Like I said, though, this is all the code we have. It's not actually deleting anything from the database. So let's look at this. So when we removed all, we set up this little message box, right? In the last video, this is, whoa, are you sure you want to remove those things? I want to do the same thing here. So let's just copy this code, bring it up here. And instead of saying this will delete everything from the table, let's say this will delete everything selected from the table. Are you sure? So then here we can say, if yes, do something. And let's indent this stuff in. Otherwise, don't do anything, right? So, okay, that looks good. So remember down here, to delete stuff from the database, we need to connect to the database, create a cursor, run some command, and then close our stuff. And we also want to clear the entries just in case there's something in it. So I'm just going to copy all this stuff here. and we'll bring it back up here. And we're doing this a lot. So in the real world, I probably would have created a function for all this stuff, and I would just call that function every time, but whatever, this will work too. So this is our database. I went ahead and backed up this database again because we're going to be deleting things from the database. If you don't remember, I just pulled up a file explorer here, went to my CGUI directory, and then here is our database right here, the tree_CRM. You can see I just made several copies of it. I just copied this, copy, right click, paste, and made a bunch of copies, right? So you might want to go ahead and do that. I made a bunch of copies because I'm a little paranoid, but whatever. So, okay, we're not going to drop this table. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So, okay, here's what we need to think about. When we click on items in our tree base, what's actually happening, right? What are we selecting? And we can see right here, we can sort of get an idea by looking at it. We're calling my tree, which is our tree view, and then we're calling .selection. This will return the selection of things that we've got, right? Well, what is that returning? Let's take a look at it and see. So let me just print out whatever that is, right? So let's go ahead and save this and run it and just take a look at this and see what's going on here. So let's say we picked the first one, the second one, and the third one. We're getting some errors here. Not to worry, we'll fiddle with that in a minute. Now, if I click this remove many selected, we get this, oh, are you sure? Yes, boom, they disappear. We come down here and this is what it's printing out, 0, 1, and 2, right? So, okay, let's run this again. What is that? 0, 1, and 2. It's just a list of things in the tree view. This is the 0th thing. This is the first thing. This is the second thing. So it's ordered like a Python list. Well, okay, that's great. But what we really need to delete something from the database is we need the ID. And this 0, 1, 2 doesn't have anything to do with the ID, right? So we need to find the ID for the 0th item. We need to find the ID for the first item. We need to find the ID for the second item, Tim Tanaka. How do we do that? Well, let's see. Let's come over here and first of all, let's comment here, designate selections, right? And we don't need to print that anymore. And here, let's go delete from tree view. You know we're doing that. So we can take that number, 0, 1, 2, and pass it in as an item number. So for instance, let's create a loop. So let's go for record in X. We've designated this Python list 0, 1, 2. We called it X. So let's say for record in X, let's just print out my_tree.item. And then we want to pass in that record. So it's going to be 0 or 1 or 2 or whatever. And we want to return the values, right? So we can do that. Let's go ahead and save this, run it, and see what that's returning. Let's pull this over. Again, we want 1, 2, and 3. We select those. We click remove many. Are you sure? Yes. We close this. We can see it's returning all of the stuff, the values. So the value for 0 is John Elder. The value for 1 is Mary Smith. The value for 2 is Tim Tanaka. Not to be confused with this 1, 2, 3. These are the IDs, right? That's not the 0, the 1, the 2. That's something else, right? So look at this. This is a tuple. So we can call the 0th item of this tuple. So 0, 1, 2. The 2th, the second item of the tuple is the ID number. We need the ID number to delete from the database because we want to say, hey, delete something from the database that's ID is 2, Mary Smith, right? So to get that ID number, we can call the 0, 1, 2th item of this tuple, right? So let's do that. Let's see if that works. So instead of returning my tree item values, let's call this the second one, right? So if we save this and run it again, right? So we've got this one, and this one. So the IDs are 1, 2, and 3. If we've done this right, it will return 1, 2, and 3. So let's click this button, remove many selected, click yes, close this out, and there it is, 1, 2, 3. Those are our IDs. Now we're calling the 2th item, we could call the 0th item. That will give us the first names, right? We don't want the first names, but if for some reason we did, we could do it that way. For instance, here we can go John, Mary, Tim, click the button, remove, close it, John, Mary, Tim. So Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, a little convoluted, but very cool. So we don't want the names, we want the IDs. So we want the second item. Let's run this one more time just to make sure, since we're kind of playing around with this. So let's go, we want John. This time let's do Tina and Mary. So this is gonna be 1, 7, and 10, right? So we click the button, click yes, close this out, 1, 7, 10. All right, so those are the IDs we need to now delete from the database. So we can't just have them floating around like this, 1, 7, and 10. We need to actually add them to a Python list, because then we're going to take that list and tell the database to delete every item from the list, right? So let's create a list, and let's head back over here and say create list of IDs. And I'm going to call this IDs _to _delete, because we want to delete them from the database. And this is just going to be a blank Python list, right? So here, where we printed these items out onto the terminal, instead of doing that, let's add selections to IDs to delete list. So here, instead of printing this, we want to call IDs to delete dot append like that, and then pass in all this stuff. Okay, so that looks good. So let's print that out onto the screen now. So let's go print IDs to delete, just to make sure that it's correctly creating a Python list of these IDs. So let's save this, run this guy one more time, and let's come back over here. Now let's do John, Tim, and Bob. So this is going to be 1, 3, and 5. So we can click on this. Are you sure? Yes. Close this. And now we get this Python list of 1, 3, and 5. So now we are ready to go. We can take this Python list, bring it over to the database and say, hey, delete records with IDs of everything in this list, right? And to do that, it's a little different than what we've looked at in the past. Let's come back over here. So let's come up here to where we removed 1. Remember, the SQL command to do that was c/execute delete from customers, where the OID equals all of this stuff, right? So instead of c.execute, we want to do something called c.execute many, because we've got many records. We're not just deleting one. We're not just executing one SQL command. We're executing multiple SQL commands. We're saying delete many records. So to do that, let's head down here to our remove many records. And we don't need to print this onto the screen anymore, so get rid of that. So let's come down here to where we want to delete everything from the table. Now, again, we've connected to the database. We've created a cursor. We're committing our change and closing our connection. Here, we want to c.execute many, right? And then what do we want to do? Well, we want to delete from our customers table where the ID equals, or you could go, I guess, OID, either one works. Let's go ID equals, and then let's put a question mark, little placeholder thing. And now we just want to pass in that IDs _to _delete. So this is that Python list that, where'd it go? We just created right here. It's going to take that list. It's going to execute many, or however many are in this list. So if there's only 1, it'll do 1. If there's 15, it'll do 15. There'll be 15 numbers listed in this Python list. It will go through the database and delete records with IDs of each of those IDs. So that should do the trick. So all of our commands so far have been c.execute, right? c.execute. Let's just come up to the very top. c.execute. So when we created the table, c.execute. There's c.execute. There's c.execute. There's c.execute. c.execute. Well, that was c.execute many. But you can see we've done a lot of c.executes, right? This is the first time we've done c.execute many. A little bit different, but should do the trick. So, okay, let's go ahead and run this guy one more time. Let's come back over here. Let's delete John, Mary, and Tim. Let's just knock out the first 3. So if this is successful, and let's see, let's remove many. Are you sure this will delete everything? Yes. Boom, it deletes them all. The ID 4 is now the first one listed, Aaron Arrington. So now if we close this, open it back up again, we see Aaron Arrington, number 4, is the very first record listed. Those first 3 have been deleted completely, and we are good to go. So that seems to work, but only with IDs up until 9. if we pick something with ID 10, so let's go 10, 11, and 12, and try and remove many. I say, are you sure? Uh-oh, we get some errors here, right? So here, if we close this, it says SQLite programming error, incorrect number of bindings supplied. The current statement uses 1, and there are 2 supplied. And if we try and run this again, we see 10 and 11 and 12 have not been deleted. So what's going on here? Well, like I said, this works the way we have it set up with IDs to delete as a Python list when the list is less than 10. So we've got a list, say, of 1, 2, and 5. But when it gets to be 10, 11, and 12, what we need here is basically a tuple in the sort of form of this, and then this, and then something like this, right? And it sort of does it automatically when it's a Python list less than 10, but when the numbers are more than 10, it starts to, try and do 10 and 0 and like 11. It splits up each number instead of putting them together like 10, right? So we need to sort of mess around with that. And we can do that fairly easy by, instead of doing IDs to delete, we're going to pass in this thing. And let's create another sort of little placeholder. I'm just going to call it A. And we put a comma there because it's a tuple, and the last thing in a tuple needs the comma. And here we could just go for A in IDs underscore to delete. So what this will do is it'll loop through our IDs to delete. It'll take A and smash it into this sort of format. Then it'll take that and smash it into there, and everything should work fine. So let's go ahead and save this. Run this guy one more time. Bring it over here. Let's try 10, 11, 12. Now we can remove many again. Boom, that disappears. We can close it. We can run it again to make sure they've actually been deleted. And 10, there's 9, and there's 13. They've been deleted. 10, 11, 12 have been deleted. So let's get rid of 9 and 13. Let's see if that works. Remove many selected. Boom. That seems to work. 9 and 13 are now gone. We can run this guy one more time. Yeah, in fact, 9 and 13 are gone, and we're good to go. A little weird. Just one of those things. Probably a bunch of different ways you could do this with this sort of formatting right here. I was just kind of in a hurry, and I thought, oh, that'd probably work. And looks like it does. So that's a sort of a hacky way to get around that. And that's all there is to it. So that is removing many selected records from the database and the tree view, and moving right along. Okay, we are basically done with this Treebase app. In this video though, I want to play around a little bit and add a cool little color picker. So you see I've added a menu, and we can change the primary color to, I don't know, something like that. Then we can change the secondary color to, I don't know, something like that. And then we've got the highlighted color. We can change that to, I don't know, something like that. That is atrocious, but you get the idea. We could change the color around this thing to whatever we want. So that's what we're gonna look at in this video. So let's head over to our code. I'm using the Sublime Text Editor and the Get Bash Terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the Tkinter playlist with, I don't know, almost 200 other Tkinter videos. So if you haven't checked that out, take a look at that. So, okay, I've done videos on the color chooser lots of times in the playlist, so check back in the playlist if you don't really know how to use this thing. I'm not gonna go into it in great detail in this video, we're just gonna use it, right? So like I said, go check out those past videos if you wanna learn more about it. But for our purposes, we're just gonna use it here. So first we need to import it. So let's go from Tkinter, we wanna import the color chooser, right? And that's all we need to do. So, all right, let's come down here and I'm gonna add a menu. So let's add menu to the top of the program. And let's call it my_menu. And that's gonna be a menu. We wanna put it in root. So let's go root.config and let's set the menu to my_menu. Okay, so I'm gonna make the app a little bit bigger. Let's say 550 just to give it a little bit more width since we're gonna put a menu on there. Otherwise things are gonna get a little scrunched together. So, okay, let's come down here and I don't know, before we do any of this stuff, let's configure our menu. So what do we want here? Let's create a menu called option_menu. and we'll set that equal to our menu. And then this will be my underscore menu. And we want to set the tear off equal to 0. And the tear off is those little lines that are at the top of a menu. We don't have them. Maybe I'll set that to 1 later to show you what it is. But we generally don't want those little lines, those little dots at the top of our menu. So I'll take that off. So then let's go my underscore menu dot add underscore cascade. And I've done menus lots of times in lots of videos in the playlist. So if you don't know what a menu is, go watch those videos, check the playlist for those, and learn all about them there. So we want to set the label to equal, and let's have this say options. And this is a lowercase L. I know it kind of looks like a capital L, but that's lowercase. And we want to set the menu equal to our option underscore menu. So this is what's going to appear at the top of our program. Now we can click this and have a drop-down menu and put some stuff in it. So what do we want to put in the drop-down menu? Let's say drop-down menu. So let's go option underscore menu dot add underscore command. And now we want to label and set that equal to something. And we want to command and we'll set that equal to something. There we go. So I'm going to copy this 2, 3, 4 times. And for this one, we want to just exit the program. So let's just say exit. So for our command here, we can just go root.quit. Now, sometimes this doesn't work if you're using idle. You're going to have to Google how to do it. I don't remember how to do it in idle for root.quit to work, but it's a thing and you can Google it. So above this one, let's put an option underscore menu dot add underscore separator. So that'll put a little bar between this exit and these other commands. So what do we want here? So let's have this one say change primary color. Let's have this one say change secondary color. Or maybe we could just put primary color, secondary color. Don't want to belabor it. And here, let's put highlight color. Okay, so inside of here, let's create some commands. We want this command. Actually, we don't want quotation marks at all here. We'll call this one primary underscore color. We'll call this one secondary underscore color. And we'll call this one highlight underscore color. So now we just need to create these functions. So let's do that real quick. And these need to be up above here. So I don't know, let's do it right here. So let's define primary color. And I'm just going to pass for now. And let me just sort of do a couple of these. This one's secondary color. And this one is highlight color. So, okay, let's save this and run it just to make sure this is running because we did a bunch of stuff real quickly there. So let's run python treebase.py. And when we do, we see we have this options menu. That looks good. Remember, we resized this, gave it 50 extra pixels, so everything fits nicely. We can click this. It says primary color, nothing happens. Secondary color, nothing happens. Highlight color, nothing happens. And we've got our little separator bar there. That looks good. And we can do exit. If you're curious about what that tear off thing was, we could fix that real quick. Let's set that to 1. Run this guy again. And now you see there's this thing at the top. That's a tear off. So it's a tear off thing. You can play around with this and make this whole menu tear off and you can move it. We don't want to deal with that. And I don't like the way that looks. So I always set that to 0 to get rid of it. So I'll go ahead and change that back to 0. So, okay, now we've got our functions. We've got our menu set up. Now we need to change this to actually do something. So how do we do that? Well, whenever this gets called, we want to pull up a color chooser. So let's create a variable. I'm going to call it primary underscore color. And let's set that equal to color chooser dot ask color. And then that's a function. And we want to grab the 1th item. There's several things that the color chooser will return. And we want the HTML color code. And that's this one thing right here. So, all right, let's go ahead and paste this in a couple times here. And instead of primary color, this is going to be secondary color. Instead of primary color here, this is going to be highlight color. So, okay, let's go ahead and save this, run it, see what this looks like. So we got our options, click primary color, boom, this thing pops up. We can pick any color we want, or we can, come down here and do a very specific color, or we could come down here and really just, type in anything we want into these colors to get as specific as possible. So when we click this, nothing actually happens yet because we're not doing anything with that information. So now we need to do that. So let's come down here to where we sort of set up the stripes to begin with. And that's right here, create striped row tags. And you can see we set the odd rows to white and the even rows to light blue. So we'll keep that by default when the program runs, but I can copy these, come up here, and underneath here, we could just sort of paste these guys in, right? Now we need to make sure a color was chosen before we do anything. So let's go if primary color, then do all of this stuff. Because let me show you here, if we run this, it's possible to open this thing, right? And then not click a color and click cancel. And if that happens, it's not returning a color. So we don't want to do anything if that happens. So that's what that if statement will do. It'll say only if there's a primary color that's been selected do we want to run these things. And we don't want, this is the primary color, so we don't want the odd row. We want to mess with the even row. And instead of, designating a specific color, instead, let's pass in this variable. So let's come down here and just boom, just like that. So let's go ahead and save this, head back over here, run it, see if that worked. There we go. Let's go options, primary color, and let's change this to bright red. Oh, that's horrible. And we do boom, it changes. Just that easy. So now we have the white one still to do. So let's go ahead and do that. This is going to be very easy. We can just copy all of this and come down here to the secondary one and paste it in. And we should probably pick color. Let me just pop in some comments really quickly here so it doesn't get out of hand. And then this one, let's say update Treeview. Same thing here. There we go. So, okay. Now here we don't need this, so I'll get rid of it. And here we need to switch this. So this one we can get rid of. We want to do the odd row one here. So again, this is not primary color. This is going to be secondary color. And once we pick that color, we can just pop it in here. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this, run it, see if that worked. So we want to change the white, which is the secondary color. We want to change it to yellow. Boom, there it is. We can change the primary color to a darker yellow. Ooh, that is horrible. Maybe an even darker, something like that. Yeah, that's better. Whatever, that works. Now we just have this highlight color one. So how do we change that? Well, that was a little bit different. So let's head back over here and let's kind of scroll down here and look and see how we set that originally. And we set that originally right here. We changed the selected color. And we did that with a style.map. We set our tree view and just set the background color to selected, and then we gave it a color. So we could just copy this whole thing and bring it back up here to our highlight color thing. And let's update tree view color. Maybe this one should be color 2. Same thing there. And down here for the highlighted color guy, we just paste in all that stuff. And there we go. But again, we need to say if highlight underscore color, then do all of this stuff. Okay. But instead of passing in the exact color, we want to, of course, pass in this highlight color. Boom, there we go. So, okay, I think that looks good. Yeah, all right, so let's save this, run it, see how that looks. So we have a selected color now. If we come up here and click highlight color, let's change this to red. Boom, now it's red. I can click around and it still works. So let's run through all of these again, make sure this is working. So let's just do sort of dark pink. Ugh. Secondary color, we'll go lighter pink. Ugh. And for a highlighted color, we'll go sort of darker pink. All right, that is horribly ugly, but it works. And it's pretty cool. All right, so just a little thing to give this a little more flair, a little more style, a little more control. I like having a little menu up here that you can do different things. We've got our exit. We can change our colors. We've got this set to options. Maybe you would change it to color options. make it a little more specific, I'll leave that to you. Name it whatever you want. But I think that's pretty much it for our Treebase app. We've done a lot of stuff. We've got update record, add record, remove all records, remove one selected, remove many selected. We can still move these up and down inside the tree view. We can clear our entry boxes. We can change the colors. I don't know what else there's left to do. If there's something else you want me to do with this app, let me know in the comment section below. If there's some interesting selections, I'll dive into it and keep going. We've been working on this for, I don't know, month and a half, 2 months now. So maybe it's time for something new anyway. But pretty cool. Nice little handy app and not that hard to do really. Okay, I thought maybe we'd be done with this Treebase app, but a bunch of people are like, hey, we need a search function. And of course we need a search function. I didn't even think about that. So in this video, we're just gonna look at looking up records by last name. We're gonna keep it real simple to start with. And we'll just type in Elder, we click search, boom, the box pops away. We have things here. We can come up here, we can start over, we can add them all back again, we can search again. Maybe this time we search for Smith. Boom, we get Mary Smith, Steve Smith, and John Smith. So that's what we're gonna do in this video. So let's head back over to our code. I'm using the Sublime Text Editor in the Get Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the playlist with all the Tkinter videos, going on almost 200 now. So check that out if you haven't so far. So, all right, we've got our Treebase.py app. This is the file we've been working on for the last, I don't know, like 10 videos or so. And let's just come down here to where we made the menu in the last video, whenever that was. And let's just create another one. So let's add a search menu. And I'm just gonna kind of copy this stuff down to here. And instead of calling this option menu, let's call this search menu. We wanna put it in my menu. We want the tear off to equal 0. And here we want this to say search. And we wanna put this in the search menu. And then down here, let's add a drop down. Instead of this being an options menu, let's add it to search menu. And let's have this say search. And for the command here, let's call this, I don't know, lookup _ records, something like that. So, okay, save this. All right, so we've got that. Now let's come up here and let's define that function real quick here, just so we have something, and let's just pass. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this and run it just to see if this is working. So let's go Python treebase.py. And when we do, we see this search thing. It says search, we click on it, nothing happens, but that looks good. Okay, so that looks good. So to look up our records, let's create a little box that pops up, and I'm gonna call it search. And this is gonna be a top level widget. We wanna put it in root. And let's go search.title, and let's have this title be lookup records. We could do search.geometry, and let's put this at like, I don't know what, say 400 by 200, something like that. And if we want to come up here, we can add an icon if we want. So let's go search.icon bitmap and put our little Codemy icon in there. Okay, so that looks good. So let's create label frame. So I'm going to call this search _ frame. And this is going to be a label frame. And we want to put this in our search window. We want the text to say last name, because we want to search by last name, right? And let's pack this guy. So search _ frame dot pack. And let's give this a pad X of like 10 and a pad Y of like 10 as well. Okay, so now let's add entry box. So I'm going to call this search _ entry. And this is going to be an entry box. And we want to put this in the search frame, right? And let's resize this, make the font a little bit bigger. So let's go like Helvetica and like size 18 or something like that. And let's pack this guy. So search entry dot pack. And let's give this a pad Y of 20 and a pad X of 20. Okay, that looks good. And let's add a button, finally. And let's call this search _ button. And that's going to be a button. We want to put this not in our search entry, but just in search, right? We don't want to put it in the label frame. We want to put it below it, I think. And let's give this a text of like search records, something like that. And we're going to have to give this a command of something, but we'll leave that for now. For now, let's go search _ button dot pack. and give this a pad X of like 20, pad Y of 20, just for fun. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this and run it, see what this looks like. See if we did that kind of fast. Almost certainly made some kind of error. So let's go search. We want to search again. This pops up. Uh-oh, something gone wrong with the button here. Oh, misspelled search. Okay, that's easy enough. Right there, search. There we go. All right, try it again. So we can click search. When we do, this pops up. We got this nice thing here. That looks good. We've got a button here. That looks good. Got a little icon up here. It says look up records. All right, so everything looks good. So now when we click this button, we want something to happen. What do we want to happen? Well, let's come down here to the button and let's give it a command of, and let's call this search underscore records. So whenever we click the button, we want to search our records, right? Or we could call it search database, or I don't know, call it whatever you want, right? So define search records. So inside of here, the first thing we need to do is we need to grab whatever we typed into that box. So I'm going to create a variable called lookup underscore record. This is the thing we want to look up. And we want this to be search underscore entry dot get. Now, we can't really do that because that's happening in this function. And this is not a global variable. So let's come up here and make it a global variable. So let's call global, let's see, search underscore entry. And let's also make search global too, because we want to be able to close this window from the outside. In order to do that, we need to reference its name, and we can only do that if we make this global. So, okay, let's go ahead and do that. And right off the bat, let's close the search box, right? And to do that, we're just going to call search.destroy. Now, we've already taken whatever we typed into the box and assigned it to this variable. So we can then go ahead and destroy the whole thing, and it doesn't matter. We've already sort of saved what we need from it. So let's go ahead and save this, run it, see if that worked. So let's go search. When we do, we can type something in. We click this, boom, it disappears. Now, did we, in fact, actually save that to the variable? Let's make sure, just to be sure. So let's go print, and let's go lookup underscore record, just to make sure we have that. So let's save this, run it again, just to see here. Okay, so search, like here, we want to look up elder. I can search, oh, I misspelled records. When we do, we close this. When we close this, boom, it prints it out, elder. Okay, so we're good to go. So first off, let's change that search. Let's see, where's our search button? Search, there it is. Misspelled records, records, there we go. Okay, so now we're able to pop up a little box, right? Type something in, click the button, save whatever we typed into a variable, and close the box. So now all we have to do is look up whatever we just put in this variable, and we don't need this anymore, so we can get rid of that. So the first thing we want to do is clear the tree view, right? It's got all of the records in there. We need to get rid of all of those, and we already sort of did that somewhere down here. So let's go, let's search for remove. There we go, remove one, remove many, remove all, right here. So here, this clears the tree view. So let's just copy this, and let's come up here, back to the top, and let's paste that in. There we go. So let's save this and run it to make sure that worked, right? So, okay, we've got this. We can search, we can type something in, boom, the whole tree view disappears. Okay, so we've cleared it. Now we just need to query the database, pull out whatever we're searching for, and put it back on the tree view. So that should be pretty simple, right? So let's come back here, and remember at the very beginning of our thing here, we query the database. So let's search for that and find that function, and here it is. And you can see right here, we're querying the database right here. So we need to connect to our database as we always do, create a cursor, do something, execute, and then we need to put those records onto the Treeview widget using that, commit our changes, and close. So I'm just going to copy all of this and bring it back up here and paste it in, right? So here we're selecting everything. Remember, that's what that star means. We're selecting everything from our customers table. Well, we don't want everything, right? We want to narrow it down to a very specific thing. So we can use a where clause. So we can go where last underscore name equals, and then we can do a question mark. And here we could put a comma and a tuple. and we can go lookup underscore record, comma, right? And this lookup record is just this thing right here, right? So, okay, that looks good. Put some space here. And then we're going to put those things to the screen, commit our changes, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this and run it, see if that worked. That seemed pretty easy. Must have screwed it up somehow. So, okay, let's search, and let's search for elder. We search records, boom, there we go. Now we can search again, and now check this out. If I type in elder with a lowercase e, and now I search, I get no results. Why? Well, when we did our query, we said we want only the records, let's see, where last name is, where it equals this thing. Well, Python is case sensitive, right? So uppercase and lowercase are two different things. Uppercase, it equals elder. Lowercase, it does not equal. So you may not want to use this equal to sign here because it's going to bring back a very specific result. Instead, we can use the like, and that will bring back all kinds of different results. So let's run this guy again. And now we can search. So now we can search lowercase elder, and it still returns capital elder, right? We could search again for instance, Smith. Boom, we get Smith. And that's all there is to it. Now, you may want to search by ID. You may want to search by last name, first name, and we'll get into all those things in another video. We'll maybe make a drop-down box where you can decide which one you want to search for. That's probably more useful. In this video, I just wanted to put the basic functionality up here and show you how to do that. So, okay, that looks good. So maybe we want to sort of restart the whole thing, right? So we've got 3. How do we get back to the whole list again? Well, let's do that real quick. Got a couple of minutes left, right? So let's come back over here and find our menu. Here it is. And here, let's put a little separator. So here's one from a couple of videos ago. Instead of option menu, we want this to be on search menu. And I'm going to copy this guy. And instead of it saying search, I'm going to have it say start over or reset maybe. Something like that. And instead of look up records, let's just query the database again. Now we can't call this function, right? Because this function, the query database, is way down here somewhere. Let's see, there it is. Well, it's not too far down. But what we can do is just copy this whole thing, delete it, bring it up to the top of our app, and paste it in. We also need to clear the screen because there's going to be some records probably if something got shown. So let's come down here to our, let's see, lookup, query database, search database, lookup database. No, let's come down here to our search records, and here we cleared the Treeview earlier, right? Let's just do that again in our query database thing right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this, run it, see if that worked. So we can search. Let's search for Smith. Boom, we get 3 records. Let's reset. Boom, the whole thing comes up. Starts with 1, ends with 29 as we would hope. There's a Brown. Let's search for that. Search BROWN. Notice I didn't put the E at the end. We got nothing. We can go back here, search again. This time we want to search for BROWNE. Boom, we get Tina Brown. And again, we can reset and we're good to go. So very cool, very easy, and not that bad. Now, I put this little thing as a pop-up just kind of for fun, right? We could add this down here. We've got a little space. We could just make our app a little bigger and kind of squeeze it in here if we wanted to. Maybe we'll do that later. I kind of like having the little pop-up thing. It's kind of nice. Boom. There it is. And we're searching by last name. Like I said, you could search by first name. You could search by ID. ID is probably better, right? You could search for email or address. Do we have email? We don't have email. Why don't we have email? That seems like something we should have. But, you know, anything you want to search for, you can. And it's just that easy. Okay, a couple of videos ago, we set this color option thing. So we can change the colors of our app, right? And a lot of you were like, yeah, but how can we save those choices so that when the program opens the next time, it's yellow instead of, the blue that it started out with. So that's what we're going to look at in this program. Lots of moving parts to this, but it's actually pretty easy. We're going to create a little ini file, .ini, and save these color options to that. And then when the program starts, every time it'll check that file and load those options and then act accordingly. We'll also set a little reset button here so we can change it back to the default if we want, and that should be fun. So let's head back over to our code. I'm using the Sublime Text Editor and the Git Bash terminal as always. And as always, you can find a link to the code in the pinned comment section below, as well as a link to the playlist with all the other Tkinter videos, almost 200 by now, so check those out if you haven't seen them so far. So I've got my treebase.py file. This is the file we've been working on for the last month or so. And what we want to do is create a little configuration file. So what I'm going to do is just open Notepad. So we can just get this little Notepad open, and I'm going to save this as, and I'm going to navigate into my GUI directory, and I'm just going to save this as treebase.ini. And ini, that's a Windows configuration file. Now, this isn't really Windows, this is Python. And so Windows and Python aren't really the same, but a configuration file is a configuration file. So we're just going to stick with this convention. Now, obviously, I'm on a Windows computer, so I'm saving this as an ini file. You can save this as any file name that you want. Save it as a text file. I don't think that matters. I'm just calling it ini file because that's sort of a convention. So what we want to do here is set up our file here. And we start out by setting a header, and I'm going to call this colors. And this is where we're going to look up in the future. We're going to say, hey, look up the color section. We're only going to have one section because that's the only thing we're saving here. But if you had more than one different type of thing you wanted to save, if you wanted to save login names and passwords and usernames and things like that, you would maybe, for instance, put, usernames or something like that in its own little section. But we just have one section, colors, so that's what we're going to save. And you'll remember our app has 3 color things: the primary underscore color, the secondary underscore color, and the highlight underscore color. And the default for these, the default for the primary color is light blue. So I'm just going to put this in there for now as the defaults. The secondary color default is white. And the highlight color was #3470083. I think that's what that was. So we can go ahead and save this. And now we've got this. This is our defaults. So we put this in there just to have something to start with. These are the default colors that we've picked for the program to be by default. So I can go ahead and close this. We don't really need to do anything with that anymore. So up here, we're going to import something. We're going to go from config parser. We want to import config parser and make sure the C and the P are capitalized in config parser. Config parser comes with Python, so there's nothing we have to install. We don't have to pip install this. It should just work. So this is going to allow us to open that file, read it, do stuff with it very, very easily, this config parser thing. And it is what it is. It's parsing a configuration file, right? So we're going to be able to read it. We're going to be able to write to it. We're going to be able to do all the cool things. So, okay, let's come down here. And I'm just going to do this right at the top here. Let's go read our config file and get colors. So we need a variable. I'm going to call it parser. And we want to set that equal to our config parser, sort of creating an instance of this thing. Now we want to read our file. So let's go parser.read. And the name of our file is treebase.ini. And again, if you're on a Mac and you named it something else besides ini, if you named it .txt or whatever, you would put that there. So this is a relative path because we saved this file in the same directory that our Treebase file is. We could just put it like this. Otherwise, we would have to, I don't know, something like GUI/that, something like that, whatever. If you're on a Mac, you could put your Mac file directories and stuff like that. So this will read the file. Now we can pull out the information that was in that file. And remember down here, we have these functions called, let's see, primary color, secondary color. So I don't want to name the variables that. So instead, I'm going to name it like saved primary color, right? And saved secondary color and saved highlight underscore color. And we can pull the information out of there by calling our parser.get. And we want to get from the section colors, right? We want to get the primary underscore color. And that's pretty much it, right? So if you remember, if we open up our any file here, this is the section, the header, that's this thing right here. And then we're calling primary color, which is just this thing right here. So this whole thing will return light blue, right? Because that's what primary color equals. And it will assign it into this variable that we can then do whatever we want with in our program. So, okay, piece of cake. I'm just going to copy this 2 more times. And this is going to be secondary color. And this is going to be highlight color. And that's it. Okay, so that is wrong. There we go. So now we can print out and make sure this works. We can print out our saved, let's say primary color. If we save this, head back over here and run python treebase.py. And then we open this, we close it right again. It says light blue. If we then come over here and change this to red, save this, run this again, come back here, close this, boom, now it says red, right? So, okay, that seems to be working. I'm gonna change that back to light blue. So now we need to change our program around to actually use this information. So we've got these saved primary, saved secondary, and saved highlight colors. We need to use those. So let's come down in our code and let's look to see where we actually use those colors the first time. And then we come down here and let's see at the Treeview right here is where we get the highlight color. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and put this right there so we can save it. But instead of this, I'm going to put saved underscore highlight underscore color. Okay, that looks good there. And then come down a little bit further. Here's where we put our white and our light blue. So instead of that, let's put saved secondary color. And for this one, let's put saved primary color. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. Now let's come back over here and open our thing here. And I'm just going to change this to red and save it again to see if that worked. So now when we run this, it should be red by default. And boom, it is. So really, that's all there is to reading it. That's a piece of cake. Let's go ahead and change this back. So now how do we actually save the stuff when we made a change? Well, so let's come back here and let's look through our code here to find those functions. There we go, primary color, secondary color, etc. So here's where we're picking a new color. And once we have this new color, we're putting it up on the screen there. But if we want to save this inside of here, we can do that. Let's create a parser again. And we set that equal to config parser. And for good measure, I'm not sure you actually have to do this. Let's read this. And remember, it's treebase.ini. But we can now parser.set. And remember, we want to set in the colors section. We want to set the what? Primary underscore color. That's what we're doing here, right? And what do we want to set it to? We want to set it to whatever color we've picked right here, right? So boom, there we go. Just that easy. Now we set it, we need to save it, right? So let's go save the config file. And here, maybe let's go config file, set the color change. Okay, so now we want to actually save the file. And to do that, we go, let's do a little with loop thing here. And let's go with open. And we want to open our treebase.ini file. And we want to open it as a W. So we want to write, right? And let's save this as, and let's call this config file. We want to parser.write our config file. And that should do it. So this is the primary color. Let's go ahead and copy this and take it down to the secondary color. And again, we're doing it inside this if statement because it's possible to open the color chooser and then not pick a color. And if that happens, we don't want to save nothing to the file. We only want to save it if we've actually chosen a new color. So this is now secondary color. So I'm just going to copy this. And we come down here and this is going to be secondary color, secondary color. Okay, I think that looks good. And one more time, we're going to copy this and let's come back down here to highlight color. Paste it in again. inside this if statement here. And this is going to be, again, highlight color, and this will be highlight color. Okay, so I think that should do it. Let's go ahead and save this and run it and see if that worked. We did that pretty quick. But whoa, all of a sudden we can already see it's done something. So let's start over. Yeah, this should be, remember, light blue. So, okay, save this, run this guy again. All right. So now let's say change the primary color to this. We save the secondary color to this or this maybe. Whoa, that is horrible. Let's do that again. Do this one. A little better. And the highlight color, let's put as this. All right, so that's pretty horrible looking. But now if we close this guy, and it's still same light blue, and we open this back up, boom, the colors have changed. And that's all there is to it. Now, one more thing I want to do is add a reset button because we might want to reset back to the way it was. So let's do that real quick. So first off, I'm going to come to the very top here and get rid of this print thing. We don't have to print that to the terminal anymore. So now let's go down to our menu. And here's our color menu thing. And let's add another separator. And let's add another thing in here. And let's just say, let's call this boom, boom, reset colors. And let's call this command reset colors. Okay, so now let's add that function. And I'm going to come up here to our color section, secondary color, highlight color. Right underneath here, let's define reset colors. And right here where we parser.set each of these things, I'm just going to do this again. So here's the highlight color one. This is secondary color one. Go. And finally, let's see, here's the primary color one. So again, let's set up our parser. So let's go parser equals config parser. And let's parser.read. We really don't need to do this, so I'm going to leave this off. Let's parser.set these things. And same thing here, we're just going to change this. Let's add this. So this will, now we don't want this to be primary color. We want this to be light blue. And we don't want this to be our secondary color. We want this to be white. And we want this highlight color to be that weird hashtag 083, I think. So that will save that. Let's save original colors to config file. Now we need to open that file again and read them again. Now we need to do these things. Let's see. So where's it at? This. So we need to reset these. So we can come down here and let's actually reset the colors. So odd row, even row. This is going to be what? Our light blue. This is going to be white. And then the highlight color, let's come up here, and where's that? It's this thing right here. So we can come back down here. And that's going to be this color right here. Okay, so that should work. Looks good. So let's go ahead and save this and run it, see if that worked. So we've got our horrible colors that we picked. Now we can reset the colors. Uh-oh. No section colors. What did I do wrong there? We do need to read. So let's go parser.read. And this is going to be our treebase.ini file. Okay, so we're setting up our parser. We're reading in the original file. Then we're setting these things and we're saving it. So we actually do need to read in the file. I was wrong about that. All right, so let's run this guy again, see if that worked. All right, we've got our horrible colors we've picked. Now let's reset the colors. Boom, they go back. Now, if we close this, open it back up again, those colors are still there. We can change one of them, something like that. We can close it. We open it back up again. All right, it's saved it. And again, we can reset it. Boom, goes back. So, okay, that's pretty much it. So really quick and easy way to do this with the config parser thing. We can read it, we can save it, we can open it, we can make changes to it, and pretty cool. And that's all there is to it. So that's all for this video. If you liked it, be sure to smash the like button below, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, and be sure to grab your totally free PDF copy of my Tkinter Widget Quick Reference Guide book. I think it's awesome, over 150 pages with all the Tkinter Widget attributes. Grab your free copy today. Just head over to tkinter.com/widget-book, enter your email address, and I'll send that right out to you. And while you're there, think about membership in tkinter.com. You can get all my Tkinter courses and all my future courses for one low price. Use coupon code YouTube to get 30% off membership if you're interested. My name is John Elder from tkinter.com, and I'll see you in the next video.